neck.
Oh, my God.
Her identity is unknown. It's not only a whodunit, it's a who is it.
As the investigation heats up, a terrifying pattern emerges.
There are 3 homicides under investigation in less than 10 days.
Let's go, man!
Could this be the same guy? Yeah, it could.
If that is so, we got a serial killer on our hands.
1099 on South Wasatch.
And detectives discover they're dealing with pure evil.
You on occasion have to make a deal with the devil. That's how this works. When you identify someone who is an emotionless animal who kills because he likes it, we need to do something about him. Period. The end. There's one thing that never changes: murder. A life has been taken. Their stories are now my stories. I never know where a case is going to lead, but I'll never stop until it's...
It's about 3 o'clock in the morning. John Hudson is just getting home from a night out.
He lived in a trailer park on the south end of Colorado Springs.
And all of a sudden, he notices his back porch light is on.
When he looked out the back door, he saw somebody laying on the steps.
Really?
And he's a little bit irritated because, he wants to get to bed.
Come on. Hey, man, you gotta do this. Too late.
And to his horror, there's a woman covered in blood, and her eyes are wide open.
Oh, my God.
He runs to call 911, but it's too late.
In the days of 1975, I'd been employed as a policeman for 2 years. I was 27 years old. I was working the west side of the city of Colorado Springs as a sector officer. You're assigned to a specific geographic zone within the city.
Dispatch to all units. We have a possible 1099 on South Wasatch. All units in District 7, please respond.
In 1975, a homicide was at 1099, but it wasn't in my part of town, so I wasn't permitted to go there. I wanted to go there so bad I could taste it.
Report of a female victim discovered. I repeat, all units in District 7, please respond.
When I heard that call that night, I had no clue, nor did anyone else, that it would become one of the most infamous cases in the history of Colorado Springs.
Within minutes, investigators respond to the trailer park at 1000 South Wasatch.
It's an older area, south of downtown.
The area would be considered somewhat run down.
Hey, thank you. Detective Smith, good to see you.
Officer, so what are we looking at here?
The detective assigned to the case was Lou Smith, and he responded to that scene.
It's a bad one. In fact, it's probably one of the worst I've ever seen.
Show me.
It's right.
Smith was a brilliant detective. He got more confessions than anybody. They couldn't have found a better guy to pursue this case than Lou Smith.
Oh, my God.
Smith looks at this victim. She's white female in her early 20s. She's covered in blood, and she has this gaping neck wound.
Her hair was matted in blood and dirt, and there was blood all over the porch. This was a brutal attack, very savage.
Look at those handprints.
The blood marks on the door frame indicate that she was approximately 2 inches away from ringing the bell. Would that have mattered? No, it wouldn't have. She would not have survived that injury if there was a surgeon living in that trailer.
Any purse or ID found?
No, sir.
Okay, let's expand the search here and get a good canvas going. Now let's get the coroner down here and move the body. Nobody else needs to see that.
Yes, sir. Also, Assistant District Attorney Chuck Heim, he's asking to see you.
Great, send him over.
Yes, sir.
Thanks.
I met Chuck Heim and worked with him on many occasions after that event. I found him to be one of the finest prosecutors I've ever seen.
Hey, Chuck.
If he is your adversary, you're dealing with a king cobra.
Let's see what we got going on here.
All right.
It was office policy that the assistant DA be notified of any homicide that occurred within the 4th Judicial District. My role was to coordinate our office with the Colorado Springs Police Department and work with the different detectives on anything that they might need.
Pardon the interruption, gentlemen. We just found a significant amount of blood.
Let's go, Chuck.
The investigators follow a trail of blood to where it begins, 50 yards away.
This must be where the attack happened. And look at these tire tracks.
Looks like there must be a getaway car.
It's likely she steps out of that car, either already wounded or is attacked outside the car. She then tries to seek help, and the perpetrator flees in the car in question.
Let's rope this place off and look for a murder weapon.
Will do.
You said the trailer owner is the one that called us in?
Yes, sir. John Hudson is his name. Last I saw him, he was sitting on the steps on his front porch.
Okay.
He's the last person to see her before the police got there and started their investigation.
Is it possible that she knew him?
John, I'm Detective Schmidt. I understand this trailer is yours.
Yeah, I don't even want to go back inside. I feel sick.
I understand.
He's 28 years of age. He is very, very distressed.
Could you walk me through your night?
I had just gotten home when I saw her on the steps. I thought some drunk or bum had passed out. Then I saw all the blood.
You know her? Did you ever see her before?
No, sir. I know everyone in this trailer park, and she ain't one of them.
Ask Mr. Hudson, have you seen any suspicious activity this evening, or seen anybody in the area that you've not seen before?
Now that you mention it, when I was on my way out, I heard this weird clanking noise, and here's this guy riding a bicycle with a busted pedal. Just odd for someone to be out here that late at night.
People don't have to be instructed on what looks suspicious. You just feel it. It's human nature.
Did you get a good look at him?
Yeah, he wasn't going real fast. Young fella, white t-shirt and jeans, curly hair.
Okay, John. We'll get in touch with you. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Poor kid.
Yeah, no kidding. All right. The sun should be showing her face here in about half an hour or so. So let's...
And he heard a clanking noise. When he looked, it was a young guy on a bicycle.
There he is. White t-shirt, blue jeans, and a clanking pedal. It's the middle of the night. You're out here riding a bike?
Hey, kid, get over here.
Right away, you're suspicious of this guy. He was seen prior to the murder, and now he's seen after the body has been found. We need to talk to him and find out what he can tell us about this.
What's going on?
What are you doing out here, son? What's your name?
Alex Calzado. I was just on my way to get some beer.
You went out to get a beer at this hour?
Mr. Calzado is nervous, and he's acting oddly, and his body language is very resistive.
Is it because he's involved in this murder? Could be.
Look, man, I don't want any trouble. I'll just get out your way.
Sit tight.
So Lou calls the police headquarters and said, run this guy's name for me and see what you can tell me. And the dispatcher came back right away.
We've got an A. Calzado listed here, active warrant for assault with a deadly weapon.
What type of weapon?
A knife.
You're not going anywhere, kid.
So Alex now has even more explaining to do than he had 2 minutes ago. Who are you, Alex? And what the hell are you doing here?
Oh, my God.
Lou Smith's assigned to investigate the violent homicide of a young female who is unidentified. And a suspicious person, Alex Calzado, has been observed in the area.
Not so fast.
He's wanted on a warrant involving the use of a knife. And he's brought into police headquarters for further investigation.
I was with my buddy Jose all night. The only time I left was to get more beer. I swear.
Alex tells Smith that he has no knowledge of a killing. He didn't kill anybody.
So you're telling me you went on a 5 a.m. beer run right next to a murder scene?
It's the truth. You can ask my friends. You can ask the store clerk.
Check it out.
Well, you want to look into his alibi, so Lou did that.
Checks out.
and that alibi checked out. He had been home all night with his friends.
The gas station is where he was buying beer, and it's open 24 hours a day, and the clerk remembers him and remembers the timeline, so he's dismissed as a suspect.
All right, get him out.
So Mr. Alex Calzado is arrested on a warrant for assault with a deadly weapon, but he's not involved in this killing.
Detective Smith, we're ready for you down at the morgue.
Thanks. Chuck, go for a ride.
Let's do it.
Hoping the autopsy will produce a new lead, the investigators head down to the morgue to talk to Dr. Urich.
Hey, Doc.
How are you?
You making any progress here?
I think I may have found a few things that'll interest you. Take a look. The cause of death was that gash there. Severed the carotid artery and she bled out.
She had the deep stab wound in the left side of her neck, like somebody tried to cut her throat.
Any idea what type of knife they did?
It's hard to say. Whoever did it knew what they were doing, though. The placement of that cut is almost strategic.
He also said that he found 4 additional stab wounds in her back.
Attack from the back? You didn't see it coming.
I'd say that's a safe conclusion.
Dr. Urich finds defensive wounds in her left hand. She tried to stop the blade at some point during this confrontation.
Also, you should know there's some signs of sexual activity.
So you think she was raped?
Couldn't say for sure.
There were semen traces on her pants. Does that mean they were placed there at the time this occurred? There's no way to know that. They were present. That's all Dr. Urich can say.
Hey, Doc.
Oh, one other thing. I found this in her front pocket.
He was unable to find any type of identification, but he did find 1 golden key in her jeans pocket.
There's no telling what this key opens. Hopefully this will lead us somewhere, because so far we have nowhere to go.
I think we got something here.
We have a dead girl whose identity is unknown. It's not only a whodunit, it's a who is it.
Hey, you got any witnesses?
Stodgy at best. I'm still asking around, but hey, Lou, how's your case coming along?
When Detective Smith returned to the police department, he met with 2 other detectives who were also working homicide cases.
Not so good. I got a Jane Doe and I got a trailer park full of people that want answers.
It's a very common thing in homicide investigations for detectives to share information. I always tried to learn as much as I could without being obnoxious about it or even obvious. I listened and paid attention.
Can you believe we got 3 people killed in less than 10 days?
That's terrible.
That's extremely unusual in 1975 in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Concern begins to build that there's something more to this.
Keep me posted.
You bet.
Excuse me, Detective Schmidt? I couldn't help it over here just now. Do you think these murders are connected?
It's too soon to tell. The motives are all different. We have drugs, we have robbery, we have a possible sexual assault.
Oh, wow.
When Smith has these conversations about these other 2 killings, there's no real connection to them other than the level of violence and the proximity of days. Could this be the same guy doing these crimes for different reasons? Yeah, it could.
If that is so, we got a serial killer on our hands.
A serial killer is a different breed of cat. He considers what he's doing over a period of time. It's not a single event, it's a series of events.
We need to find him before he strikes again.
Sounds like you got your work cut out for you.
Can you keep an ear out on patrol?
Oh, I will, sir. You can count on that.
Oh, thanks, Kinder.
Lou Smith had an innate ability to reach people, never objected to the fact I was a rookie. He was very accepting. You're one of the brotherhood now. And I always liked him. He's a remarkable guy.
Back in his office, Detective Smith tries another tactic for soliciting new information.
You've got a lot of pressure on you when you're assigned a case like this. So it would not be uncommon to then call a press release.
Okay, this should do it. Let's get some copies and get KOA on the line.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
When I was in television, we would be talking to the police department several times a day on the phone. Their information officer would, set up an interview with us with one of the detectives.
We are very careful when we release information to the press.
We're asking anyone who may have any information to call the Colorado Springs Police Department immediately.
Detective.
The only information we'd provide about this girl is her physical appearance. How tall is she? What does she weigh? What color's her hair? What's color her eyes? And her clothing. That's it.
Detective, do you believe she was murdered?
Do you have any suspects? That's all I have for right now.
Detective.
As news of the murder spreads, the CSPD is inundated with tips from the public.
There's a natural built-in problem where people are absolutely convinced that it's their cousin, it's their sister, it's their aunt, it's their lifelong friend, and you wind up chasing down a number of false leads.
Okay, well, I'm glad you found her. Take care now.
Any luck?
I'm afraid another dead end.
Detective, I've got a woman up front, says she needs to talk to you.
What is this today, the ninth walk-in? Oh, I better go see if I can roll this one out. Could you sit in my office?
Yes, sir.
Good.
One of the tips that came in was a gal named Jenny Erickson.
Hi there. What brings you down here today?
I heard about that girl who was killed the other day.
You know the one?
I live right around the corner from there, and you see, that very same day I saw a man walking, and his shirt was covered in blood.
Do you know who he is?
She's seen this individual before, is close by to the area where the victim was found, and she's able to point out the apartment he lives in. Well, somebody covered in blood in the crime scene area would certainly work. So they're very interested in who this guy is.
And you're sure that it was the same day?
Positive.
We'll check it out. Thanks for coming down, Jenny.
He either has to be part of this or he's not. He has to be cleared or arrested, one of the two.
So Smith went over there, knocked on the door.
Yes?
And sure enough, this individual's got a cut over his eye.
Sir, I'm Detective Smith. Do you mind if I come in and ask you a few questions?
Guess so.
Well, could he have gotten that cut in a fight with our victim? Very well could have.
Inside, Smith sits down with 31-year-old James Conley.
What's all this about?
Mr. Conley, we have reports of you seen in the same area where a murder took place. You were covered with blood. Can you explain it?
Mr. Connolly reports that he was recently in a motorcycle accident and it adversely affected his equilibrium. He has great difficulty in walking and now he has to use a cane. But he went out the other day to buy some beer at the gas station he frequents, and he had forgotten his cane.
I took a nasty fall on the way. I split my eye open, damn near bled through my shirt.
I see.
Now, any policeman knows that a head wound bleeds profusely. There are many capillaries in your scalp and your forehead, and when you get even a minor injury to your forehead, you are covered in blood, and you look like you're going to die any minute. So that's a very reasonable explanation.
Can anybody verify that?
I suppose the gas station clerk. I bought beer and bandages from him. Actually, I have the receipt. Let me go get that.
I appreciate that.
He needs a cane just to walk. It would be very difficult for someone who has difficulty walking to engage in a physical confrontation with a resistive victim.
Made this purchase at 3:15 p.m.?
Sounds about right.
The timestamp on the receipt told Lou right away that this was much, much earlier in the day than this homicide occurred.
Okay, Mr. Conley. Thank you. Officer?
His timeline doesn't work at all for this murder. His explanation is more than reasonable, and the officers decide that Connolly has no promise whatsoever.
Back at the station, it's all hands on deck to wade through the endless flood of tips.
Excuse me, Detective. There's a woman on the phone for you. She says she's your Jane Doe's roommate.
Another one of these tips?
You're going to want to take this phone call. She's online, too.
It's always difficult to take anyone seriously when they call in to report they know who it is, when you've already had 100 people do that, and 100 people were wrong about it.
Detective Smith?
I know it's her. I know it's my roommate. I haven't seen her in days.
Okay, slow down. What's your name?
Pamela Roos. Listen, she always comes home eventually. She carries her apartment key with her everywhere.
What did you say?
It's a gold key, a single gold key. She always keeps it in her front jean pocket.
This is very specific information that was never released to the public. So here we have someone who knows something that nobody knows, that the person carries a key in their pocket. Well, my. After hundreds of people, we may have found the magic one. Lou Smith has been assigned the gruesome homicide of a young female who is yet unidentified.
Cause of death was that gash there,
But now, finally, after hundreds of tips, we have a person that seems to be extremely promising.
I know it's my roommate.
She knows things that no one else would know that wasn't associated with the case.
After finally catching a potential break, investigators rush to meet the tipster, Pamela Roost.
Now, Pamela, you told me that your roommate carried her apartment key in her pocket.
Yes, always.
This look familiar?
That's it.
It's very important to get the identification as quickly as possible. And once you've got that, you have something that will start you down the right path.
May I?
Please.
Smith inserts the key in that door, and it unlocks it.
He knew then that he probably just identified his Jane Doe victim.
But Smith still needs her to positively ID the body.
I'm going to show you a photo. Can you do that?
That's got to be just very traumatic and very stressful, and, you know, the kind of thing where your stomach's churning.
Oh my God. That's her. That's Karen.
It's a huge step up in this investigation. Her name is Karen Grammer.
What can you tell me about her?
She was just so lovely.
Karen Grammer was your typical 18-year-old starting out life. She was adventurous. She was kind of a free spirit. She liked poetry, and people liked her.
She says she came here to find work in the restaurant business. She's a waitress by trade, and we met and became roommates and became friends.
She had family here. We'd like to notify them.
No, they're mainly in Florida. God, her brother's gonna be devastated. They were very close.
Karen Grammer was, in fact, the sister of Kelsey Grammer, who went on to become a very famous actor. Their father was lost to them when they were young.
So they leaned on each other. They were close.
Who could have done this to Karen? She didn't have any enemies in the world. Everyone loved her.
Well, that's what we're trying to find out. Now, when is the last that you saw her?
She said that Karen works the evening shift at a seafood restaurant, and the last time she saw her, she went to work, and she never came back.
I didn't know what to think.
And that was the night of the murder. So we know that Karen Grammer was at the seafood restaurant the night she was killed.
You have any idea where this seafood restaurant is?
It's over on Academy.
The seafood restaurant is several miles across town from where she was discovered. So how did she get from the seafood restaurant to the place where she's found in a relatively short amount of time? How'd that happen?
I noticed she wasn't wearing glasses in the photograph that you showed me. Did you find them?
Why do you ask?
Her roommate said that she was almost as blind as a bat, that she wore very thick glasses.
Well, those glasses were never found. And then the question becomes, where are they?
Thank you, Pamela. You've been a great help.
With no time to waste, Smith heads over to the restaurant where Karen worked.
Did she show up for a shift? Did she work all day? We can find out a lot from the people that she worked with.
Excuse me, sir. You work here?
I do. I'm the manager. How can I help you?
Smith meets the manager of the place, and he remembers Karen being there that night.
He was a little annoyed that Karen never showed up for the rest of her shifts.
Karen may not have a job with us much longer. We haven't seen her since.
He doesn't realize what's happened to Karen Grammer.
I'm sorry to tell you this, sir, but Karen's been killed.
Oh, my God.
He's incredibly distressed and immediately willing to do anything he can do to help.
You know, Tyler worked that night. Maybe he can help you.
Thank you.
The cashier is Tyler Harrington.
Hi, Tyler. I'm Detective Schmidt.
Tyler had just overheard the conversation that Karen is dead, and he's very distressed.
Oh my God. I didn't think those guys would actually hurt her.
And Smith said, what did you say? What guys are you talking about?
What have I done?
He says the night she was killed, 3 guys came in here and one of them pulled a gun on me and tried to rob the place.
I had already emptied the cash register and I had nothing, so they left.
But then he saw them approach Karen and start talking to her.
God.
So Smith's immediate thought is, could this have been a robbery gone wrong and Karen Grammer was collateral damage? That could very well be true. We're going to have to find out.
Didn't see it coming.
Lou Smith is investigating the violent death of Karen Grammer He encounters a cashier at a seafood restaurant where she was employed, who says that an attempted robbery took place. It's fairly clear to Smith this could be connected to this homicide.
After countless dead ends, Detective Smith believes 17-year-old Tyler Harrington might be the key witness he's been searching for.
Now, wait a minute. Are you telling me that you saw the suspects talking to Karen after they just tried to rob you at gunpoint?
Yes.
All of a sudden, Tyler Harrington has provided him with what is likely to be the prime suspects in this case.
What I need you to do now is start from the beginning. What happened?
It was getting time for me to lock up, and these three guys walked in. Excuse me, we're close.
Not anymore. Give me all your money.
And one of the males opened his coat and showed him a gun.
I'm not playing. Give me all your money now.
I swear I don't have anything. I swear.
Tyler said, the register's already been cleaned out. There's nothing here.
So it's a botched robbery. There's no people to rob. There's no anything to rob.
How did you get them to leave?
I told them I had someone waiting outside for me, and they got spooked, I guess.
Well, did you?
No, but I didn't know Karen was out there.
Tyler says he looks out the window and sees these guys talking to Karen.
Now, maybe these three guys assumed that Karen was the one waiting for Tyler. Did they decide that Karen Grammer is a witness to their attempted robbery and make a decision to take her?
Why didn't you report
I didn't want to get in trouble. I was supposed to have already locked the door. If I would have did that, man, none of this even would have happened.
What happened to Karen is not your fault, son.
He was just too scared to say anything to anybody. Now, at his age, that's understandable. There's a fear factor there that's unexplainable to somebody who's an adult and understandable to somebody who's a kid.
Now, what I need you to do is try to remember everything about these individuals.
Right. Well, there was three black guys. Definitely military.
Why did you say that?
He had the impression that they were military, as they had short, high and tight haircuts, the military-style cut, and one of them was wearing a field jacket.
Okay, Tyler. If you remember anything else, call me. Understand?
Yes, sir.
So now, going from 0 to 60 miles an hour in this case, we now know we're looking for three black males with military haircuts. When Smith returned to the station, he encounters Detective Burns and Detective Adams, and they're discussing their investigations into their homicides. So they all sit down, because now Smith's got something to say.
Sounds like we're looking for a couple of military guys. Black males, armed.
Yeah, that's interesting. The witnesses gave me the same description in my case.
No kidding.
We've got three cases now with seemingly different motives, but they could always be connected. You keep that in the back of your mind.
What are the details?
Victim is a 29-year-old male.
Smith learns that the first victim was identified as Daniel Van Loan, a cook at the Four Seasons Hotel.
11 days before Karen Grammer is murdered, Daniel Van Loan was found on the side of the road by a patrolman just a mile from where he worked. He had a scarf tied over his face and had been shot in the temple.
And only 3 days before Grammer's death, Winifred Prophet, a soldier stationed at Fort Carson, was also murdered under mysterious circumstances.
Detective Adams says that Winifred Prophet was found stabbed to death at Prospect Lake.
They stabbed him in the chest with an Army-issue bayonet.
People in the area said they saw a group of black males in a green vehicle cruising around.
Any idea who that might be?
We're not sure, but we may all be looking after the same guys.
You know, I'm starting to think the same thing.
They start thinking, do we have serial killers on our hands?
If they are the same guys, they are incredibly dangerous. They kill without compassion.
Detective Schmidt, I'm sorry to interrupt. You have a phone call in your office? It's pretty urgent.
Try to say who they were?
No, sir.
Thanks, Kendra. Well, fellas, let's gonna have to circle back on this.
You got it.
Later that day, Detective Smith gets the break he's been looking for.
Detective Smith?
I'm calling from the New Orleans District Attorney's Office.
I have a defendant in custody I think you'll be interested in.
He says that he has information about the murder of Karen Grammer in Colorado Springs, and he also knows about the murder of Daniel Van Loan and Winfred Prophet.
You got to be kidding me.
Could this be the key piece of information to catching a serial killer? It most certainly could. Lou Smith is investigating the murder of 18-year-old Karen Grammer, but has learned of 2 other investigations involving the murder of Daniel Van Loan and Winfred Prophet that are connected.
I think you'll be interested.
A district attorney's investigator in New Orleans says he has a defendant in custody who knows everything about all 3 murders, and he's willing to trade this information in exchange for leniency.
And Detective Smith knows just the person to help broker a deal.
Hey, Chuck.
Hey.
The police department or Lou Smith cannot grant immunity to any witness. It has to come through the district attorney, Chuck Heim.
You know that grammar case I'm working?
Of course. What's the latest?
You never guess who called me.
Who?
Smith says the New Orleans District Attorney's Office had been tracking an individual through the FBI whose name was Larry Dunn. And what Mr. Dunn wants is immunity from the murder charges.
Lou says, we need to talk to this guy. I said, all right, where is he?
He's in New Orleans.
What do you think he knows?
He said, I think he knows about at least 3 murders. He may have been at them or was told about them by the people that did the killing.
Interesting. Let me just make a quick phone call.
All right, I'm gonna go get back.
Over the next hour, investigator Chuck Heim quickly works out a deal with his boss.
I said, all right, I will give him immunity for anything he has done in the 4th Judicial District if he agrees to give us all the information that he knows about these killings. And so we went down on an afternoon flight to New Orleans, and we interviewed him the next morning at the New Orleans House of Detention.
Sure appreciate you giving us a call.
Nice to meet you, fellas. Glad you made the trip. Seems like Dunn's ready to talk.
Let's get in there.
We went in there and shut the door. We looked at him, and I drilled him in the eyes, and he looked like he was dead serious.
Okay. You tell us the truth about these murders, and you agree to testify at trial, we'll give you immunity for all the crimes you've committed in the state of Colorado. Are you interested?
Immunity transactions are conducted with the following caveats. In no uncertain terms, that you need to spill your guts. You need to vomit your information all over this table. And if you leave out one single fact, we're going to burn you to the ground. You on occasion have to make a deal with the devil. It's how this works.
Now, tell me about Daniel Van Loan.
Well, we needed the money, and he seemed like an easy target.
Dunn said that he, another guy named Freddie Glenn, and another guy named Michael Corbett waited for Mr. Van Loan to get off of work.
Daniel Van Loan was a cook. They decided, let's go rob him.
Get him out the car!
What are you doing?
Let's go!
Please help!
Hey, blindfold his ass!
Please don't do this!
Get on your knees.
Get on your knees, man! I'm begging you, I got a wife and children!
They shot him in the head.
Check his pockets, man.
Oh, come on, man!
50 cents?
And robbed him of a mere 50 cents and left him in a ditch on the side of the road.
The guy was a bust. He had like 2 quarters on him.
What happened next?
There was that one guy, Winfred.
Dunn said they next targeted Winfred Prophet, who was a soldier that they all knew. They had arranged a bogus drug deal to lure Winfred Prophet to Prospect Lake.
Hey, guys. Prophet, give me all your money.
What?
There was no deal going down. They didn't have any marijuana. They wanted to rob him.
What are you doing? That's right, your money.
Freddie, come on, man, please.
Freddie Glenn stabbed him in the chest and then gleefully told people about how lovely it felt when he stuck this bayonet into this guy's chest and felt the bones crunch.
I mean, these guys are animals. It's not that they're trying to get money. Michael Corbett and Freddie Glenn are killing because they like to kill.
I want to talk about Karen Grammer. Why don't we start from the beginning? The night of June 30th.
It was me, Corbett, and Glenn just chilling at the apartment. Glenn got the idea to make a few hits, which is nothing new.
How do you mean?
Larry Dunn said that they were all in the military together out at Fort Carson.
But they were always in trouble. They were robbing fellow soldiers, and they're all together on this evening.
Then Larry Dunn said just prior to leaving the apartment, they each ate a hit of LSD. Sometimes it can make you very violent.
We drove around till we came to that seafood spot.
The one on Academy?
Yeah, that one. Give me all your money. Give me all your money now.
I swear I don't have anything. I swear.
The place was a bust, so we left. Then we seen that white girl outside.
Karen Grammer.
Yeah, her.
Karen Grammer was standing in exactly the wrong place at exactly the wrong moment.
Hey. How long you been standing out here?
I'm just waiting for my friend to get off work.
She's seen us, bruh. She's seen
Wait,
us.
so what?
Enough of this. You know what? You come in with us. Come on.
Get on me! Help! Help!
Her fate was sealed the moment she crossed paths with these killers. They saw her as somebody that they could kidnap and brutalize, and that's what they wanted.
And they decided to drive back to Freddie Glenn's apartment, and then the sexual assaults started.
They all took turns, sexually assaulting her every way which you can. And that's all I want to say about it.
Now what? What we gonna do with her?
I don't know, man. She's seen our faces.
Yo, we can't let her go, man. Yo, shut up! Let's get her back in the car and drop her off somewhere.
The initial decision is they're going to just drop her off on the other side of town. They had tied her hands together with a blue scarf, and they had taken off her glasses and put them on the dashboard of the car. So essentially, she's riding around with them and can't see anything.
Please don't let them kill me. I'll do anything you want. Please, help me.
Don't worry. You'll be all right.
They came across this alley next to a trailer park on the south side of the city, and Dunn says they decided this was a good place to let her go.
Get out of here. Okay, man, let's go.
But according to Larry Dunn, that's when Freddie Glenn had a change of heart.
Nah, man. She's seen too much.
Glenn goes up behind Karen Grammer.
Pull your neck home.
And tells her to tip her head back. He cuts her throat and stabs her several times in the back. And she tries to fight him off, getting a few defensive wounds, but is unsuccessful.
Freddie, what's wrong with you, man?
Try! Now! Come on, go!
She is stumbling around, blind, without her glasses, bleeding to death. And they speed away in their car. And she staggers probably toward the light that she sees of a porch light.
To still be alive and crawl along the ground, clawing her way, touching, seeing a door, thinking, maybe I can get some help. That's the hard part, is to know what she went through.
She was able to get to Mr. Hudson's trailer, where she ended up dying.
We have a young girl loses her life for no reason at all.
I think we've heard enough.
Officer.
Larry Dunn agrees to testify against Corbett and Glenn and receives immunity for his involvement in the 3 murders.
This information from Dunn is sufficient to obtain arrest warrants for Freddie Glenn and Michael Corbett.
They track down Freddie Glenn and Michael Corbett, arrest both of them, but they both lawyered up. Well, you know what? We don't need you to talk. We got what we need.
There is more than sufficient case here to put them away forever.
Freddie Glenn and Michael Corbett are convicted of 3 counts of first-degree murder. They are sentenced to life in prison.
Michael Corbett died in the summer of 2019 in his cell at the age of 64. Freddie Lee Glenn remains locked up in the Colorado State Penitentiary.
Excellent work, everybody.
Yes.
We all played a part. I'm just glad we got justice here.
Here, here.
I was very proud of Colorado Springs Police Department and the Sheriff's Department. Lou Smith was the one that really put the frosting on the cake.
The river moved slowly through the Essex countryside, carrying with it the silence of another Victorian evening. A pale mist hovered above the water like a thin burial shroud, drifting between reeds that bent under the weight of the damp air. The sky was already surrendering to darkness, and the last traces of daylight reflected weakly on the river's surface, turning it into a ribbon of dull silver. From a distance, everything appeared peaceful. The kind of peace people trusted. The kind of peace that concealed terrible things beneath it. A man walking along the riverbank noticed something caught among the reeds. At first, it looked like a bundle of discarded cloth tangled in the current. There was nothing unusual about rubbish finding its way into the water. The rivers and canals of Victorian England carried all manner of unwanted things. But something about this bundle held his attention. It remained trapped against the vegetation while the water flowed around it. He stepped closer. The evening breeze shifted. The smell reached him first. Then he saw the shape. Small. Far too small. A child's body. For a moment he simply stared, unable to process what he was seeing. The world seemed to pause around him. The river continued its endless journey toward the sea, indifferent to the horror resting at its edge. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell rang. A dog barked. Life continued as it always had. But not for this child. Not anymore. Nobody standing on that muddy riverbank could have known that the tiny body floating in the water was not an isolated tragedy. Nobody could have imagined that behind this single death existed a hidden industry built on desperation, greed, and deception. Nobody yet understood that this child was merely one face among countless others whose names would never be recorded in history. Because the most terrifying monsters are not always found in dark alleys or abandoned buildings. Sometimes they advertise in newspapers. Sometimes they smile warmly. Sometimes they offer help. And sometimes they hold a crying infant in their arms while promising a frightened mother that everything will be all right. In the late 19th century, Britain was a nation divided between prosperity and cruelty. Great cities expanded. Factories multiplied. Railways connected distant towns. Scientific discoveries transformed everyday life. To many observers, it seemed like an age of progress. Yet beneath that progress existed another reality. A reality hidden from polite society. A reality inhabited by women whose existence respectable people preferred not to acknowledge. Young women who became pregnant outside marriage. Domestic servants dismissed from employment. Factory workers abandoned by lovers. Teenage girls cast out by families desperate to avoid scandal. For these women, pregnancy was not merely a personal challenge. It could become a social death sentence. A single mistake could destroy a future. A growing stomach could mean unemployment. An illegitimate child could mean homelessness. Many women faced impossible choices. And whenever society creates impossible choices, someone inevitably discovers a way to profit from them. That profit came in the form of a seemingly compassionate solution. Baby farming. The phrase sounded harmless, even wholesome. In newspaper advertisements scattered across England, respectable-looking women offered to adopt unwanted infants. They promised loving homes, proper care, Christian values, bright futures, all for a fee. To frightened mothers, these advertisements appeared like miracles. Imagine being 19 years old in Victorian England. Imagine carrying a child conceived during a brief romance. Imagine knowing your employer would dismiss you if your condition became known. Imagine having nowhere to go. No husband. No money. No support. Then imagine opening a newspaper and discovering an advertisement from a kind woman willing to take your baby and raise it as her own. How desperately would you want to believe her? How desperately would you need that promise to be true? Thousands of women did. Thousands handed over their infants along with every coin they could gather. Many kissed their babies goodbye believing they were securing a better future. Many never saw those children again. The public image of baby farmers was carefully constructed. They dressed respectably. They spoke gently. They presented themselves as maternal figures offering charity and compassion. Behind closed doors, however, some operated businesses built on a horrifying equation. Every child required food. Every child required clothing. Every child required time. Every child reduced profit. A dead child cost nothing. That simple calculation transformed human lives into financial burdens. The babies themselves became obstacles standing between the baby farmer and money already received. And in that dark arithmetic, countless innocent children lost their lives before they had the opportunity to truly live. Among the names associated with this nightmare, one would become infamous beyond all others. Amelia Dyer. Even today, more than a century after her crimes, the name carries a chilling weight. She did not look like the monster history remembers. Photographs reveal an ordinary Victorian woman. A face one might pass on a busy street without a second glance. No wild eyes. No sinister grin. Nothing visibly monstrous. That was precisely what made her so dangerous. Evil rarely announces itself. It often arrives wearing familiarity. By the time authorities began piecing together the truth, Amelia Dyer had spent years cultivating trust. She understood exactly what desperate mothers wanted to hear. She knew how shame silenced questions. She understood how social stigma worked in her favor. The mothers needed secrecy. She provided secrecy. The mothers needed hope. She sold hope. And once the money changed hands, hope often died. What makes this story especially disturbing is not simply the number of victims. It is the vulnerability of those victims. These were not adults capable of defending themselves. These were not people who could run, scream for help, or identify their attacker. Many were only days old. Some had barely opened their eyes to the world. Some had never slept beneath a proper roof. Their entire lives existed within a span of weeks. Perhaps days. Perhaps hours. The records of the time are incomplete. Victorian bureaucracy was imperfect. Many births went poorly documented. Many disappearances attracted little attention. Countless children vanished before anyone thought to ask where they had gone. Historians believe the true number of victims may never be known. That uncertainty creates its own horror. Every unidentified infant. Every forgotten grave. Every missing record. Each represents a life reduced to a question mark. As investigators later uncovered evidence, a grim pattern emerged. Babies arrived healthy. Babies disappeared. Letters stopped. Mothers received excuses. Then silence. Sometimes the infants were drugged into unnatural sleep. Sometimes they were deliberately starved. Sometimes they were killed outright. Their bodies hidden. Discarded. Thrown away as though they had never mattered. And yet they did matter. Each child represented an entire future erased before it could begin. A first birthday that never came. A first word never spoken. A first step never taken. Entire lifetimes extinguished before they had the chance to unfold. That is what makes this case linger in the imagination long after the details fade. It forces us to confront a difficult truth. The murders were not committed solely by one individual. They were enabled by a society that turned its eyes away. A society that punished vulnerable mothers more harshly than those who exploited them. A society so obsessed with respectability that countless women felt compelled to surrender their children into the hands of strangers. Without that desperation, the business of baby farming could never have flourished. Without silence, it could never have survived. As darkness settled across Victorian England, the machinery of this hidden industry continued operating behind respectable curtains and polished front doors. New advertisements appeared. New mothers answered them. New babies arrived. Neighbors noticed little. Authorities suspected less. And somewhere, behind walls that concealed unimaginable cruelty, infants cried for comfort that never came. The cries eventually stopped. The silence remained. For years, the deaths accumulated unnoticed. One child. Then another. Then another. A tragedy repeated so many times that individual victims blurred into statistics. But eventually, secrets become too heavy to bury. Eventually, rivers return what people try to hide. Eventually, someone asks the question others have avoided. And eventually, a single discovery can unravel an entire web of lies. That moment was approaching. The body found near the water was not merely evidence of a crime. It was the beginning of an awakening. A crack in the carefully constructed illusion. A glimpse into a darkness few citizens wanted to believe existed. Because the truth waiting beneath the surface was almost too monstrous to comprehend. This was not the story of one murdered child. It was the story of a system that transformed infants into commodities. It was the story of mothers trapped by shame. It was the story of predators who learned how to profit from despair. And at the center of that story stood a woman whose name would become synonymous with one of the most horrifying chapters in British criminal history. The river carried its secrets for years. But not forever. Soon investigators would begin following threads of evidence scattered across towns and villages. They would uncover letters stained by grief, advertisements built on deception, and testimonies from women haunted by choices they believed they had no alternative but to make. They would discover patterns hidden within missing records and forgotten files. Piece by piece, the image of a nightmare would emerge. Yet before detectives, newspapers, and courtrooms entered the story, there were only mothers and babies. Promises and betrayals. Hope and loss. And somewhere in the gathering darkness of Victorian England, another frightened woman was preparing to hand her child to a stranger she believed she could trust. She could not know that the decision would become the final chapter of her baby's life. She could not know that history would one day remember these deaths as the Chelmsford baby murders. And she could not know that the smiling woman waiting to receive her child was already carrying more secrets than the river itself. The woman sat alone beside a small window streaked with rain, her newborn child sleeping in her arms. Outside, the streets of Victorian England moved as they always did. Horse-drawn carts rattled over wet cobblestones. Factory whistles echoed through the grey morning air. Men hurried toward work with collars raised against the cold. Women carrying baskets disappeared into the fog that seemed to settle permanently over industrial towns. Inside the room, however, time felt different. The young mother stared down at the tiny face resting against her chest. The child's fingers were curled into loose fists. Its breathing was slow and peaceful. For a brief moment, the world beyond those walls ceased to exist. No judgment. No shame. No fear. Only a mother and her baby. Then reality returned. The landlord was already demanding payment. Her employer had dismissed her weeks earlier. The father of the child was gone. Perhaps he had abandoned her deliberately. Perhaps he simply vanished when responsibility arrived. Either way, the result was the same. She was alone. Across England, thousands of women found themselves trapped inside similar circumstances. Their stories rarely appeared in official records. History preserved the names of politicians, industrialists, generals, and monarchs. The names of poor women were often forgotten. Yet those forgotten women formed the foundation upon which the baby farming industry was built. To understand the horror of the Chelmsford baby murders, one must first understand the world that created the conditions for such crimes to flourish. Victorian Britain is often remembered as an era of elegance. Photographs show grand buildings. Paintings depict refined ladies strolling through manicured gardens. Books describe prosperity and progress. The reality was far more complicated. The 19th century was an age of contradictions. The British Empire stretched across continents. Industry generated immense wealth. Scientific discoveries transformed society. Yet beneath this progress existed widespread poverty, overcrowding, disease, and social inequality. Entire families often lived inside single rooms. Children worked long hours in factories. Workers died from preventable illnesses. And women occupied a particularly vulnerable position. A respectable woman was expected to follow a strict path. Marriage. Motherhood. Obedience. Anything outside those boundaries invited condemnation. For an unmarried woman who became pregnant, the consequences could be devastating. Social attitudes were unforgiving. Employers frequently dismissed pregnant servants. Landlords evicted unmarried mothers. Church communities distanced themselves. Family members sometimes severed ties entirely. The child itself became a visible symbol of scandal. A reminder of behavior society deemed unacceptable. While the man involved could often disappear without consequence, the woman carried evidence of the relationship for everyone to see. The imbalance was cruel. And it was precisely that cruelty which predators learned to exploit. Newspapers became one of the most important tools in this hidden economy. Tucked between advertisements for household goods and employment opportunities appeared notices offering assistance. The wording was carefully chosen. Respectable. Comforting. Reassuring. Experienced lady willing to adopt infant. Good Christian home offered. Child cared for as one of the family. No questions asked. Such advertisements spoke directly to desperation. The phrase "no questions asked" carried enormous power. For many women, secrecy was not merely desirable. It was essential. They feared public humiliation. They feared losing employment. They feared disappointing parents. They feared becoming social outcasts. The advertisements offered an escape route. Or at least the illusion of one. The women who placed these advertisements became known as baby farmers. Not all were criminals. Some genuinely cared for children entrusted to them. Some provided loving homes. Some operated legitimate childcare arrangements. But the lack of regulation created opportunities for abuse on a massive scale. Authorities exercised little oversight. Records were inconsistent. Inspections were rare. Once a baby disappeared behind the doors of a private residence, very few mechanisms existed to ensure its welfare. The system relied heavily on trust. Trust can be a beautiful thing. In the wrong hands, it becomes a weapon. Among those who recognized the opportunities hidden within this system was Amelia Dyer. Before she became infamous, she appeared remarkably ordinary. Born in 1837, she experienced a childhood marked by instability and hardship. Her mother suffered severe mental illness. Witnessing that deterioration left lasting scars. Some researchers have speculated that these early experiences shaped her psychological development. Others argue that greed alone explains her actions. The truth may never be fully known. What is known is that Amelia possessed an unsettling ability to present herself as trustworthy. She understood appearances. She understood how respectable clothing and polite speech could lower defenses. Most importantly, she understood vulnerable people. She knew how desperation sounded. She knew how fear looked. She knew precisely what words frightened mothers needed to hear. That knowledge became her most valuable asset. At first glance, the arrangement appeared mutually beneficial. The mother paid a one-time fee. The baby farmer assumed responsibility for the child. Everyone moved forward. At least that was the promise. The reality was far darker. A legitimate adoption required resources. Food cost money. Clothing cost money. Medical care cost money. Housing cost money. Every additional day a child remained alive reduced profit margins. Within the twisted logic of criminal baby farmers, infants became financial liabilities. The dead required nothing. The living required everything. It was a horrifying calculation. And yet it repeated itself countless times. The methods varied. Some children were slowly neglected. Others received dangerous quantities of sedatives. One particularly common substance was known informally as Godfrey's cordial. Marketed as a remedy for infants, it contained opiates capable of inducing prolonged sleep. To exhausted parents, such products seemed helpful. To unscrupulous caretakers, they offered another means of control. A heavily sedated child cried less, demanded less attention, consumed fewer resources. Over time, the consequences could become fatal. Witnesses from the era occasionally described babies who appeared unnaturally quiet, listless, weak, barely responsive. Some never recovered. Others died slowly from neglect hidden beneath the appearance of illness. Meanwhile, letters continued flowing between mothers and caretakers. At least initially. Many women requested updates, photographs, reassurance, proof that their child remained healthy. Sometimes they received replies, brief notes describing progress, claims that the baby was thriving, promises that everything was well. Sometimes the letters contained outright fabrications. The child had already died. The mother simply did not know it. Weeks turned into months. Then correspondence stopped altogether. Excuses followed. A change of address. A misplaced letter. An illness. A family emergency. Anything to delay questions. Anything to prevent scrutiny. Many mothers lacked the means to investigate further. Travel cost money. Work obligations limited movement. Fear of public exposure discouraged persistence. And so countless stories ended in uncertainty. Women spent years wondering. Some convinced themselves their children were alive somewhere. Others suspected the worst but could never prove it. That uncertainty became its own form of punishment. While victims suffered in silence, the broader public remained largely unaware of the scale of the problem. Baby deaths were tragically common during the Victorian era. Disease claimed thousands of lives annually. Medical knowledge remained limited. Infant mortality rates were shockingly high by modern standards. As a result, suspicious deaths often blended into broader statistics. A dead baby did not always trigger alarm. Especially when that baby belonged to poor parents. Especially when records were incomplete. Especially when nobody asked questions. This environment provided perfect cover. Criminal baby farmers operated in shadows created not only by their own deception but by society's indifference. The victims occupied the margins. Their suffering attracted little attention. Their disappearances rarely generated headlines. Their voices could not be heard. And so the cycle continued. Every week brought new advertisements. Every week brought new mothers. Every week brought new infants. Some arrived wrapped carefully in blankets sewn by loving hands. Some carried handwritten notes from mothers hoping one day to reconnect. Some arrived with tiny possessions meant to accompany them into better lives. A ribbon. A toy. A photograph. A lock of hair. Objects filled with hope. Objects preserved by grief. Objects that would later become heartbreaking reminders of futures stolen before they could begin. As Amelia Dyer's activities expanded, so too did the number of children passing through her care. Neighbors occasionally noticed things. A constant stream of infants arriving. Babies disappearing unexpectedly. Strange inconsistencies. Yet suspicion rarely transformed into action. Victorian society excelled at minding its own business. Respectability created a protective shield. People assumed kindness where they wished kindness existed. And Amelia understood that better than anyone. She cultivated appearances meticulously. To outsiders, she appeared practical. Capable. Maternal. Exactly the sort of woman entrusted with vulnerable children. Behind those appearances, however, another reality was taking shape. A reality measured not in years or months but in brief, fragile lives. One child arrived. Then vanished. Another arrived. Then vanished. The pattern repeated so often it became routine. And that routine concealed horrors difficult to imagine. Every infant represented a story interrupted. Every disappearance represented parents robbed of answers. Every death deepened a darkness still hidden from public view. Yet secrets possess a weakness. The more lives they touch, the harder they become to contain. Eventually patterns emerge. Eventually inconsistencies accumulate. Eventually evidence surfaces. The rivers, canals, and waterways of England would soon begin revealing fragments of a truth somebody desperately wanted concealed. But for now, the machinery continued operating. The advertisements remained convincing. The promises remained attractive. The mothers remained desperate. And the children remained defenseless. Far from newspaper headlines and courtroom drama, the true tragedy unfolded quietly. Inside rented rooms. Behind closed doors. Within the arms of women forced to make impossible choices. The world remembered great inventions, royal ceremonies, and political debates. History celebrated progress. Yet hidden beneath that progress existed another story. A story of vulnerable lives transformed into commodities. A story of greed disguised as compassion. A story that would eventually horrify an entire nation once the full truth emerged from the shadows. And somewhere, on a cold Victorian evening, another mother kissed her child goodbye, believing she was making the most painful sacrifice of her life. She had no idea that something far worse awaited beyond that farewell. Night settled heavily across Essex, draping the countryside in darkness so complete that even familiar roads seemed transformed into something unfamiliar. The last lanterns glowed faintly behind curtained windows. Farmhouses became silhouettes against the horizon. The distant outlines of trees merged into black walls of shadow. To most people, it was simply another evening at the end of another ordinary day. But hidden behind the appearance of normality, tragedy was unfolding. In one house, a baby cried. In another, a woman sat awake, staring at an empty cradle. Somewhere else, a mother folded a tiny blanket she no longer needed, convincing herself that her child was safe in a distant home. Across towns and villages, lives continued moving forward, unaware that a silent epidemic was spreading through Victorian England. No newspaper screamed warnings from its front page. No public campaign demanded action. No government official stood before crowds to expose the danger. The victims were too young to speak. The mothers were too ashamed to speak. And the people responsible had become experts at ensuring silence. The terrifying thing about the Chelmsford baby murders is not merely the violence involved. It is how ordinary everything appeared from the outside. There were no dramatic kidnappings. No masked intruders lurking in alleyways. No blood-stained crime scenes shocking entire neighborhoods overnight. Instead, there were polite conversations. Signed agreements. Handshakes. Advertisements. Receipts. Letters. The machinery of death operated beneath the disguise of respectability. And that disguise worked extraordinarily well. When modern audiences imagine serial killers, they often picture individuals driven by uncontrollable rage or obvious psychological instability. The reality can be far more disturbing. Some killers build routines. They create systems. They transform murder into administration. The Chelmsford case belongs to that category of horror. The victims were not chosen because of personal hatred. They were selected because they were vulnerable. Because they were profitable. Because society had already abandoned them long before they encountered their killer. That reality forces an uncomfortable question. How many crimes can flourish when the victims are people nobody wants to see? In Victorian Britain, illegitimate children occupied one of the lowest positions within the social hierarchy. They inherited stigma before they inherited names. Many entered the world already burdened by judgments they could never understand. The circumstances of their birth often determined how others viewed them. A child born to a married couple inspired celebration. A child born outside marriage inspired whispers. The difference was cruel. The difference was arbitrary. And yet it shaped countless lives. The women who surrendered their children rarely did so lightly. Popular imagination sometimes paints these mothers as careless or indifferent. Historical evidence suggests the opposite. Many experienced profound grief. Many agonized over their decisions. Many spent sleepless nights wrestling with impossible choices. Some sold possessions to pay adoption fees. Some borrowed money from relatives. Some skipped meals to save enough for what they believed would secure their baby's future. The act of handing over a child often represented an act of desperate love rather than abandonment. That is what makes the betrayal so devastating. These women were not discarding their children. They were trying to save them. And in many cases, the very act meant to protect the child placed them directly into danger. Imagine standing outside a stranger's home with an infant in your arms. Imagine carrying weeks of fear, shame, and uncertainty. Imagine believing that behind the door lies the answer to every problem. Then imagine watching a respectable-looking woman smile warmly and assure you that your baby will be cared for. What reason would you have to doubt her? She speaks kindly. Her house appears respectable. She has experience with children. She provides references. Everything appears legitimate. Everything appears safe. And yet the moment the door closes, an invisible line separates mother and child forever. Many never realized it. Many spent years believing their sons and daughters were alive somewhere. Some continued writing letters. Some kept birthdays marked on calendars. Some imagined reunions. Some never stopped wondering. The emotional devastation stretched far beyond the victims themselves. Entire families lived with unanswered questions. Entire lifetimes became defined by uncertainty. This uncertainty would later become one of the greatest obstacles facing investigators. Unlike conventional murders, these crimes often lacked immediate reports. No missing person notices appeared the day after a death. No relatives rushed to police stations demanding answers. Weeks, months, sometimes years passed before suspicions emerged. By then, evidence had vanished. Witness memories had faded. Records had disappeared. The passage of time became an accomplice. For criminals operating within the baby farming industry, delay offered protection. And protection enabled repetition. The same methods could be used again and again. A new advertisement. A new mother. A new infant. Another payment. Another disappearance. Another secret buried beneath layers of deception. As the years passed, rumors occasionally surfaced. Stories circulated among working-class communities. Women exchanged warnings in hushed conversations. Certain names acquired uneasy reputations. People spoke about babies who seemed to vanish. About letters that suddenly stopped arriving. About caretakers who moved frequently from town to town. Yet rumors alone rarely generated official action. Victorian law enforcement lacked many tools modern investigators take for granted. There were no centralized databases. No DNA analysis. No computerized records. No national systems capable of instantly connecting patterns across regions. Criminals could exploit these limitations. And some did. Among them, Amelia Dyer proved especially adaptable. Whenever suspicion intensified in one location, she relocated. Whenever questions arose, She altered details. She understood movement. She understood anonymity. She understood how fragmented information could protect someone willing to exploit it. Years passed. Children disappeared. The hidden death toll continued growing. Then something began to change. Not all secrets remain hidden forever. Not all victims remain invisible forever. Sometimes the truth resurfaces in the most literal sense imaginable. Water has a peculiar relationship with evidence. It conceals. It transports. It erodes. Yet it also reveals. Rivers do not keep every secret entrusted to them. Eventually something returns. A body. A piece of clothing. A fragment of truth. Near Chelmsford and surrounding areas, waterways threaded through the landscape like veins. They connected towns. Supported commerce. Provided transportation. And, for someone seeking to dispose of evidence, they offered apparent convenience. Bodies placed in water often drifted away. Current scattered clues. Time erased details. At least that was the assumption. Reality proved less cooperative. The discovery that would help unravel this nightmare did not arrive with dramatic fanfare. It arrived quietly. Unexpectedly. Almost accidentally. A chance observation. A suspicious object. A closer look. Then realization. The kind of realization that permanently divides life into before and after. The sight of a dead infant carries a unique emotional weight. Even hardened investigators struggle to remain unaffected. There is something universally tragic about a life ending before it truly begins. The discovery immediately raised questions. Who was the child? Where had the child come from? How had the child died? The answers did not emerge immediately. But the questions themselves mattered. Questions have power. Questions force attention. Questions disrupt complacency. And once enough questions accumulate, even carefully constructed lies begin to collapse. As word spread among authorities, the case expanded beyond a single death. Investigators encountered inconsistencies. Documents failed to align. Stories contradicted one another. The deeper they looked, the stranger everything became. Names appeared repeatedly. Addresses resurfaced. Patterns emerged. What initially seemed like an isolated tragedy began resembling something far larger. Something systematic. Something deliberate. For the first time, fragments scattered across years of disappearances started connecting. The image forming from those fragments was horrifying. Because every new discovery suggested additional victims. Every missing record hinted at another child. Every unanswered question opened the possibility of another death. Investigators faced a chilling prospect. If their suspicions proved correct, they were not searching for a single victim. They were uncovering an entire hidden graveyard. Not necessarily a graveyard marked by tombstones and monuments. A graveyard composed of forgotten lives. Forgotten names. Forgotten futures. And perhaps most heartbreaking of all, forgotten opportunities. Children who might have grown into teachers, laborious, artists, parents, or dreamers. Children who never received the chance. The scale of loss extended beyond numbers. Numbers can become abstract. History often reduces tragedies to statistics. 10 victims. 20 victims. 100 victims. But every number represents an individual human story. A heartbeat. A face. A future. That truth remained central to the unfolding investigation. Because behind every piece of evidence stood a child. Behind every record stood a mother. Behind every disappearance stood a moment when someone trusted the wrong person. As authorities moved closer to the truth, another realization emerged. The crimes were not solely the product of one person's actions. They reflected failures embedded throughout society. Failures of oversight. Failures of compassion. Failures of accountability. The system had created opportunities. Predators merely exploited them. And now, at last, those opportunities were beginning to disappear. The river had offered its first clue. Others would follow. The illusion of respectability was cracking. The carefully maintained facade was beginning to crumble. Behind it waited a reality darker than most Victorians dared imagine. A reality built upon greed, sustained by secrecy, and paid for with the lives of children who had entered the world expecting care and received cruelty instead. The investigation had not yet begun in earnest. The public remained largely unaware. The newspapers had not yet unleashed outrage. The courtrooms had not yet heard testimony. But the first threads were already unraveling. And somewhere, perhaps without fully realizing it, the woman at the center of this nightmare was moving steadily toward the moment when her secrets would no longer remain hidden. The darkness that had protected her for years was beginning to recede. Dawn, however distant, was finally approaching. Long before investigators would uncover the truth, before newspapers filled their pages with outrage, before courtrooms heard testimony that would horrify an entire nation, there was a world that made the Chelmsford baby murders possible. It was a world of sharp social divisions, strict moral codes, and hidden suffering. To understand the crimes, one must first step into Victorian England itself, a society that appeared orderly and respectable on the surface, yet concealed enormous cruelty beneath its polished exterior. The year could have been 1875, or 1882, or 1890. In many ways, the details hardly mattered. Across southern England, the rhythm of daily life remained largely the same. The mornings began with the sound of factory whistles. Coal smoke drifted above rooftops and settled into the streets. Railway stations filled with workers rushing toward another day of labor. Shopkeepers unlocked wooden doors. Horses pulled wagons loaded with goods. Church bells echoed across towns and villages, reminding everyone of the values society claimed to uphold. Respectability, discipline, family, faith. These ideals were repeated endlessly throughout Victorian life. To be respectable was to belong. To be respectable was to be protected. To be respectable was to matter. Those who fell outside these boundaries often discovered how quickly society could turn its back on them. Nowhere was this reality more visible than in the lives of unmarried women who became pregnant. For many modern observers, it is difficult to fully grasp the weight of social stigma during the Victorian era. Today, an unmarried pregnancy may bring challenges, but it rarely destroys an entire life. In 19th-century Britain, the consequences could be catastrophic. A domestic servant who became pregnant often lost her employment immediately. A young woman from a religious family might be disowned. Landlords refused housing. Neighbors whispered. Church congregations judged. Potential employers closed their doors. A single mistake could erase years of hard work. The woman carried the visible evidence of her situation wherever she went. Meanwhile, the man responsible often disappeared into the crowd without consequence. This imbalance created thousands of desperate situations. Every year, frightened women searched for solutions. Some entered workhouses. Some relied on relatives. Some abandoned children at charitable institutions. And some answered advertisements that appeared to offer a lifeline. The advertisements were easy to miss unless one knew where to look. Tucked between notices for tailoring services, employment opportunities, and household goods, small blocks of text promised help. Comforting help. Private help. Discreet help. Respectable married couple wishes to adopt infant. Experienced nurse seeking child to raise. Good home available. Permanent care guaranteed. The language was carefully chosen. Every sentence targeted fear. Every promise targeted desperation. Every word was designed to create trust. Many women stared at these advertisements for hours before responding. Some carried the newspaper clipping folded inside their pockets for days. Others hid them beneath mattresses, reading them repeatedly by candlelight after everyone else had gone to sleep. Because answering such an advertisement meant making a decision that could alter the course of two lives forever. The mother's. And the child's. Across Essex and the surrounding counties, the practice known as baby farming had become increasingly common. The term itself sounded harmless, even wholesome. It suggested care, nurturing, responsibility. In reality, the industry ranged from legitimate childcare arrangements to outright criminal enterprises. Some baby farmers genuinely provided homes for children. Others viewed infants as nothing more than sources of income. The difference could mean life or death. A typical arrangement followed a simple pattern. The mother paid a lump sum. The baby farmer assumed responsibility for raising the child. The mother walked away believing her son or daughter would receive opportunities she could not provide herself. On paper, it seemed practical. In practice, it created a dangerous incentive. Every child represented an expense. Food cost money. Clothing cost money. Medicine cost money. Housing cost money. The longer a child lived, the more profit disappeared. For individuals motivated by greed rather than compassion, a horrifying solution presented itself. Reduce the child. Increase the profit. The logic was monstrous. But it was also effective. And because infant mortality rates were already high during the Victorian era, suspicious deaths often attracted little attention. Disease claimed thousands of young lives every year. Cholera, tuberculosis, whooping cough, scarlet fever, malnutrition. Death visited poor communities so frequently that many people regarded it as a tragic but unavoidable part of life. This reality provided perfect camouflage. When a child died under questionable circumstances, authorities often saw no reason to investigate. The death blended into countless others. Another infant lost. Another grieving parent. Another statistic. The system itself became a shield behind which predators could operate. The public rarely saw the hidden side of baby farming. Most citizens imagined kindly women caring for children in modest homes. They imagined clean nurseries, warm meals, protective guardians. The truth inside some of these houses was dramatically different. Rooms overcrowded with infants. Poor sanitation. Children left unattended for hours. Babies weakened by neglect. Cribs occupied 1 week and empty the next. Behind closed curtains, suffering accumulated unnoticed. The people living nearby often suspected nothing. That was partly because Victorian culture strongly discouraged interference in private domestic affairs. Neighbors might notice unusual activity. A constant flow of babies arriving. Children disappearing. Frequent visitors. Yet curiosity rarely translated into action. People minded their own business. Questions remained unasked. Assumptions remained unchallenged. And in that silence, criminal operations flourished. Essex itself offered an ideal backdrop for such activities. The county occupied a unique position within southern England. Its towns connected rural communities to larger urban centres. Railway lines increased mobility. Road networks allowed people to travel more easily than previous generations. Families moved frequently in search of work. Records remained fragmented. An individual could relocate from one district to another and leave very little trace behind. For someone seeking anonymity, the environment provided opportunities. For someone seeking victims, it provided a steady supply of vulnerable people. The countryside surrounding Chelmsford presented a striking contrast to the industrial cities. Fields stretched across rolling landscapes. Narrow roads wound through villages. Church spires rose above clusters of cottages. Rivers and canals threaded quietly through the region. Visitors often described the scenery as peaceful, picturesque, safe. Yet appearances can be deceiving. Some of history's darkest crimes have unfolded in places that looked perfectly ordinary. Chelmsford was no exception. By the 1880s and 1890s, the area stood at the intersection of two worlds. Traditional rural life still survived in many villages. At the same time, modernization was reshaping daily existence. Railways connected communities once isolated by distance. Newspapers spread information more rapidly than ever before. Economic opportunities attracted workers from different regions. This movement of people created anonymity. Anonymity created opportunity. And opportunity attracted individuals willing to exploit it. One such individual was Amelia Dyer. To understand why she became so dangerous, it is important to recognize how completely she blended into her surroundings. She did not resemble a villain from popular imagination. There was no dramatic warning sign. No obvious marker of evil. Witnesses often described her as practical and experienced. She possessed knowledge of nursing. She understood infant care well enough to appear credible. She knew how to communicate with anxious mothers. Most importantly, she knew how to inspire trust. Trust is one of the most powerful forces in human relationships. It allows strangers to leave children with caretakers. It allows patients to follow medical advice. It allows people to believe promises. Trust simplifies life. Without it, society cannot function. Yet trust also creates vulnerability. A person who successfully earns trust gains access to opportunities unavailable through force. Amelia Dyer understood this principle instinctively. She rarely needed coercion. Her victims came willingly. They arrived carrying babies, money, and hope. Everything she required. The mothers who approached her were often exhausted by fear and uncertainty. Many had spent months hiding pregnancies beneath loose clothing. Some had concealed their condition from employers. Others had lied to family members. A few had traveled considerable distances to avoid recognition. By the time they reached a baby farmer, they were emotionally drained. When someone finally offered a solution, they wanted desperately to believe it. Imagine a young woman standing outside a stranger's house on a cold morning. The baby in her arms begins to cry. Her savings are nearly gone. Her future appears uncertain. Then the door opens. A calm voice welcomes her inside. A warm room offers temporary comfort. Tea is served. Kind words are exchanged. The woman across the table seems understanding. Compassionate. Trustworthy. The young mother feels relief for the first time in months. That relief is exactly what makes the story so tragic. Because while she sees safety, danger may already be waiting. While she imagines a future for her child, someone else may already be calculating profit. While she leaves believing the worst part of her ordeal has ended, the real nightmare may only be beginning. This was the environment in which the Chelmsford baby murders emerged. Not from chaos. Not from lawlessness. But from a society that valued appearances more than realities. A society that punished vulnerable women while failing to protect vulnerable children. A society that created conditions in which exploitation could masquerade as charity. For years, these conditions remained largely unchanged. The advertisements continued. The mothers continued arriving. The babies continued disappearing. And few people recognized the scale of what was happening. Yet beneath the surface, tension was building. Too many children were vanishing. Too many questions remained unanswered. Too many lives were ending in silence. The world of Victorian respectability had built walls around these tragedies, hiding them from public view. But walls do not last forever. Eventually, cracks begin to appear. Eventually, secrets escape. And eventually, a hidden horror grows too large to remain concealed. The story that would one day become known as the Chelmsford baby murders was moving steadily toward that moment. The stage had been set. The victims were already entering the story. And somewhere behind a carefully maintained mask of respectability, a woman was preparing to take advantage of every weakness society had placed before her. By the time the sun rose over Essex each morning, thousands of lives were already in motion. Farmers guided horses across damp fields. Factory workers hurried toward chimneys that stained the sky with smoke. Shopkeepers swept dust from their doorways. School children walked narrow roads lined with hedges and stone walls. To an outside observer, Victorian England appeared stable, disciplined, and orderly. Yet beneath this carefully maintained image existed a parallel world that respectable society rarely acknowledged. It was a world inhabited by those who lived close to the edge of survival. Widows struggling to support families. Domestic servants dismissed without warning. Laborers injured on the job. Children growing up in overcrowded housing. And women whose pregnancies threatened to destroy every opportunity they possessed. These people existed in plain sight, yet their hardships often remained invisible to those with power. Chelmsford itself reflected these contradictions. As the county town of Essex, it occupied a unique position between rural tradition and industrial progress. Railway lines connected it to London and neighbouring communities. Trade moved steadily through the region. Markets brought farmers, merchants, laborers, and travellers together. New businesses emerged. Population numbers increased. The future seemed full of promise. But prosperity rarely reached everyone equally. A short walk from a prosperous street could reveal an entirely different reality. Narrow alleys crowded with poverty. Families squeezed into single rooms. Children lacking proper nutrition. Women working exhausting hours simply to afford basic necessities. For many, life balanced precariously between stability and disaster. One illness. One accident. One lost job. One scandal. Any of these could push a person beyond recovery. No social safety net existed in the modern sense. Charity organizations provided limited assistance. Churches offered occasional relief. Workhouses accepted those with nowhere else to go. Yet these solutions often carried their own hardships and humiliations. The workhouse in particular inspired dread throughout Victorian society. Conditions were intentionally harsh. Authorities believed discomfort would discourage dependency. Families were frequently separated. Privacy vanished. Dignity became a luxury. Many women considered almost any alternative preferable to entering such institutions. This fear would later play a significant role in the expansion of baby farming. When a woman became pregnant outside marriage, the options available to her were painfully limited. Keeping the child often meant economic ruin. Entering a workhouse meant public humiliation. Abandonment carried moral and legal consequences. Adoption appeared to offer a middle path. A solution that protected both mother and infant. At least that was the promise. The demand for such arrangements created a thriving market. And wherever markets emerge, individuals inevitably seek profit. Some participants entered the baby farming trade with good intentions. They viewed themselves as caretakers, providers, surrogate parents. Others quickly realized that vulnerable people represented business opportunities. The distinction between care and exploitation became dangerously blurred. In newspaper offices across England, advertisements arrived regularly. The language evolved into a familiar formula. Healthy home offered. Experienced nurse available. Respectable family seeks infant. Terms reasonable. References available. The advertisements projected warmth and security. Nothing about them suggested danger. Nothing warned readers that certain advertisers viewed human lives through the lens of financial calculations. For mothers living under enormous pressure, these notices appeared almost miraculous. Many spent weeks debating whether to respond. Some wrote letters repeatedly before finding the courage to send them. Others traveled long distances to meet prospective caretakers in person. The meetings often followed predictable patterns. The caretaker presented herself as kind and understanding. The mother explained her circumstances. Questions were asked. Promises were made. Money changed hands. Then came the hardest moment. The farewell. Historical accounts from the era reveal heartbreaking scenes. Women kissing infants one final time. Mothers struggling to maintain composure. Babies sleeping peacefully, unaware that their lives were about to change forever. Tears suppressed. Promises exchanged. Future correspondence arranged. Then the mother walked away. Some looked back repeatedly. Others forced themselves not to. Every step felt heavier than the last. Many believed they were sacrificing their own happiness to secure a better future for their children. What they did not realize was that some of those futures would never arrive. As baby farming expanded throughout England, concerns occasionally surfaced. Journalists published warnings. Reformers demanded regulation. Doctors reported suspicious patterns. Yet meaningful oversight remained limited. Part of the problem stemmed from the era's extraordinarily high infant mortality rates. Modern audiences often underestimate how common childhood death once was. In Victorian Britain, countless children failed to reach adulthood. Disease moved quickly through crowded communities. Medical treatments remained primitive. Sanitation problems contributed to widespread illness. When infants died, tragedy followed. But surprise often did not. Death had become familiar. This familiarity created dangerous blind spots. A neglected infant could be mistaken for a sick infant. Starvation could resemble illness. Abuse could disappear beneath assumptions about natural mortality. Predators understood these weaknesses. They learned how to hide within expectations. Every unexplained death became easier to dismiss. Every unanswered question became easier to ignore. As long as victims belonged to society's most vulnerable groups, public attention remained limited. Amelia Dyer entered this environment equipped with several advantages. She possessed experience in nursing. She understood medical terminology well enough to appear knowledgeable. She knew how to communicate confidence. Most importantly, she understood appearances. Victorian culture valued respectability intensely. A clean dress. Polite manners. Proper speech. These qualities often inspired trust more effectively than actual evidence. Amelia mastered this performance. People meeting her frequently encountered someone who seemed competent and maternal. Nothing immediately suggested the darkness hidden beneath the surface. Yet appearances can become masks. And masks can become remarkably convincing. At first, her activities attracted little scrutiny. Children arrived. Children disappeared. The pattern blended into the background noise of Victorian life. Mothers moved frequently. Families relocated. Records remained incomplete. The absence of centralized systems allowed information to vanish between jurisdictions. A woman could surrender a child in one county and receive little meaningful oversight regarding what happened afterward. This fragmentation became one of the greatest allies available to criminal baby farmers. No single authority possessed the full picture. One official might know about a missing infant. Another might encounter suspicious correspondence. A third might notice unusual death records. Without effective communication, these fragments remained isolated. The larger pattern stayed hidden. And so the cycle continued. Month after month. Year after year. New advertisements appeared. New mothers responded. New children entered an increasingly dangerous system. The geography of Essex contributed to this concealment. Roads connected communities while still preserving a degree of separation. Villages maintained distinct identities. Travel required effort. Information moved slower than people. Someone seeking anonymity could exploit these realities effectively. The countryside itself offered additional opportunities. Rivers wound through the landscape. Canals linked commercial routes. Wooded areas provided privacy. Remote locations remained largely undisturbed. For individuals seeking to hide evidence, the environment presented numerous possibilities. Most residents never considered such possibilities. Why would they? People naturally assume ordinary explanations before extraordinary ones. A missing child might have been adopted elsewhere. A caretaker might have moved. A letter might have been lost. These explanations felt more comfortable than confronting something sinister. Comfort often delays suspicion. Suspicion often arrives only after evidence becomes impossible to ignore. Meanwhile, Daily life continued. Markets opened and closed. Church services filled pews. Families gathered for meals. Children played in streets and fields. The contrast between ordinary existence and hidden horror grew increasingly striking. Somewhere, a family celebrated a birth. Elsewhere, another child disappeared forever. Somewhere, a mother prayed for her infant's future. Elsewhere, that future had already been stolen. The public remained largely unaware of how frequently these tragedies occurred. Most people viewed cases individually. A single death here. A missing child there. An unfortunate circumstance somewhere else. Very few understood that these incidents might be connected. The absence of visible patterns created an illusion of rarity. In reality, the problem extended far beyond any single community. As reform advocates examined infant welfare during the late 19th century, disturbing observations emerged. Certain caretakers seemed linked to unusual numbers of deaths. Questions arose regarding financial incentives. Concerns spread regarding insufficient oversight. Yet meaningful reform moved slowly. Government institutions often reacted rather than anticipated. By the time authorities recognized the scale of the threat, countless children had already suffered. This delay would prove catastrophic. Because while public debate proceeded at a cautious pace, criminal activity continued uninterrupted. Every month mattered. Every delay created opportunities. Every overlooked warning sign increased the number of potential victims. For Amelia Dyer and others operating within similar circles, time worked in their favor. The longer authorities hesitated, the safer their activities became. The longer society ignored vulnerable mothers, the easier exploitation remained. The longer people trusted appearances, the more effectively deception functioned. And deception was becoming increasingly sophisticated. Letters reassured worried mothers. Invented stories explained missing correspondence. False promises maintained confidence. Each lie built upon previous lies. Each deception bought additional time. The system relied heavily upon emotional manipulation. Mothers wanted to believe their children were safe. That desire sometimes overpowered doubt. Even when suspicions emerged, uncertainty lingered. What if the child truly was thriving? What if concerns were unfounded? What if asking too many questions caused problems? These uncertainties discouraged action. Predators understood this dynamic instinctively. Hope can become a prison. The possibility that everything might be fine often prevents people from confronting evidence that suggests otherwise. As the years passed, however, subtle changes began occurring. Whispers spread. Stories circulated. Certain names generated unease. Journalists showed increasing interest in infant welfare. Medical professionals voiced concerns. Reformers demanded accountability. The comfortable silence surrounding baby farming was beginning to weaken. No one yet realized how horrific the truth would prove to be. No one yet understood how many lives had already been lost. No one yet recognized that a woman operating behind a mask of respectability would eventually become one of the most notorious child killers in British history. But the foundations of that revelation were already forming. The environment that had protected her for so long was changing. Questions were becoming harder to dismiss. Patterns were becoming harder to ignore. And somewhere beyond public awareness, fate was preparing the discovery that would force authorities to look more closely than ever before. The stage was slowly being set for a confrontation between hidden evil and emerging truth. When that confrontation finally arrived, it would expose not only the crimes of one individual but the failures of an entire system. A system that had abandoned vulnerable women. A system that had failed defenseless children. A system whose weaknesses had allowed horror to flourish in the shadows for far too long. And beneath the calm surface of Victorian Essex, the darkness continued growing, unaware that its days of secrecy were beginning to run out. If someone had walked through Chelmsford during the final decades of the 19th century, nothing would have seemed unusual. The streets bustled with ordinary life. Merchants arranged goods in shop windows. Children chased one another through muddy lanes. Churchgoers exchanged greetings outside stone chapels. Farmers traveled into town with wagons full of produce. The world appeared stable, predictable, and familiar. That illusion was precisely what made the coming revelations so shocking. Because beneath the surface of ordinary life, an invisible network had already woven itself into the fabric of society. It did not operate in hidden caves. It did not require secret passwords. It did not resemble the criminal conspiracies described in sensational novels. Instead, it existed in plain sight. In newspaper advertisements. In rented houses. In handwritten letters. In quiet conversations between frightened women and seemingly compassionate caretakers. The true horror was not that these crimes were hidden. The horror was that they were visible, yet misunderstood. By the late 19th century, baby farming had evolved beyond isolated arrangements. It had become a recognizable feature of British social life. Most citizens understood the concept. Many viewed it as unfortunate but necessary. Some considered it charitable. Others regarded it with suspicion. Few understood how easily the system could be manipulated. The lack of oversight created an environment where trust became more valuable than proof. And trust, once given, could be exploited. The women entering this world often shared similar stories. They came from different towns, different backgrounds, different social classes. Yet many found themselves trapped by the same fears. Fear of disgrace. Fear of poverty. Fear of becoming burdens to their families. Fear of raising a child they could not afford to support. In Victorian Britain, shame carried enormous power. A respectable reputation could determine where a person worked, lived, worshipped, and socialized. Losing that reputation often meant losing everything connected to it. Many young women therefore lived double lives during pregnancy. Loose dresses concealed growing stomachs. Excuses explained absences. Lies protected secrets. Every day became an exercise in survival. Some hoped the father would marry them. Others waited for promises that never materialized. Many eventually confronted the same reality. No rescue was coming. No miracle would solve their situation. The decision regarding the child rested entirely upon their shoulders. For some women, surrendering a baby felt like tearing away a piece of themselves. Yet they convinced themselves it was an act of love. An act of sacrifice. A painful choice made for the child's benefit. That belief sustained them through unbearable moments. It allowed them to walk away from infants they adored. It allowed them to endure sleepless nights haunted by uncertainty. It allowed them to imagine futures where their children grew up happy and safe. Unfortunately, hope can become dangerous when placed in the wrong hands. Amelia Dyer understood this better than almost anyone. She had spent years observing human vulnerability. Years learning what people wanted to hear. Years discovering how trust could be transformed into opportunity. Unlike impulsive criminals driven solely by emotion, she demonstrated patience. She understood process. She understood presentation. She understood that successful deception rarely depends upon dramatic lies. Instead, it depends upon small believable ones. A reassuring smile. A polite letter. A convincing explanation. Each interaction built confidence. Each promise lowered defenses. Each successful transaction strengthened her reputation. From the outside, she appeared to be part of the solution. In reality, she was becoming part of the problem. The psychology behind baby farming reveals something deeply unsettling about human behavior. Most mothers who entrusted children to caretakers were not ignorant. Many possessed doubts. Many noticed inconsistencies. Many experienced moments of hesitation. Yet desperation often changes how people evaluate risk. When every available option appears terrible, individuals frequently choose the one that offers the greatest hope. Even if that hope rests on uncertain foundations. This phenomenon allowed exploitative caretakers to operate for years. Their victims were not foolish. They were vulnerable. There is a profound difference. History sometimes judges past victims harshly. Why didn't they ask more questions? Why didn't they investigate further? Why didn't they recognize the danger? Such questions overlook the realities these women faced. Travel required money. Communication moved slowly. Legal protections were limited. Social pressure discouraged scrutiny. And perhaps most importantly, many mothers desperately needed the arrangement to be legitimate. Belief became a survival mechanism. Without it, the emotional burden became unbearable. Meanwhile, the children themselves remained entirely dependent upon adults. A newborn infant enters the world with complete trust. It cannot distinguish kindness from cruelty, protection from exploitation, safety from danger, love from neglect. Everything depends upon the decisions of others. That dependence transformed infants into ideal victims. They could not describe abuse. They could not identify perpetrators. They could not alert authorities. Their suffering remained largely invisible. And because infant mortality rates remained tragically high, deaths often generated less scrutiny than they would today. This reality created a perfect storm. Vulnerable victims, desperate families, limited oversight, social stigma, fragmented records. All the ingredients necessary for prolonged exploitation. As years passed, warning signs accumulated. Some mothers noticed correspondence becoming irregular. Others encountered difficulties obtaining updates. A few attempted to visit children only to discover caretakers had relocated. Stories circulated among working-class communities. Whispers traveled through neighborhoods. Certain names inspired discomfort. Yet rumors rarely produce immediate change. People prefer certainty. Rumors offer only fragments. And fragments are easy to dismiss. Especially when accepting them would require confronting something horrifying. Imagine hearing that babies might be disappearing. Imagine hearing that children entrusted to caretakers may never have reached adulthood. The allegation sounds monstrous. Almost unbelievable. Many people naturally rejected such possibilities. The alternative was simply too disturbing. As a result, skepticism often protected the guilty more effectively than innocence protected the vulnerable. Throughout this period, Victorian Britain continued celebrating its achievements. Industrial expansion accelerated. Technological innovation advanced. The British Empire reached extraordinary levels of influence. Newspapers praised progress. Politicians spoke of national strength. Public attention focused on the future. Yet beneath these achievements existed individuals who remained largely forgotten. Poor women. Illegitimate children. Society's margins. The people least likely to receive protection. The people most likely to suffer when systems failed. And fail they did. The failure was not merely legal. It was cultural. Communities frequently viewed unmarried mothers as sources of embarrassment rather than individuals requiring assistance. Charitable resources remained insufficient. Public discussion often emphasized morality rather than support. Responsibility was assigned. Compassion was limited. These attitudes created fertile ground for exploitation. Criminal baby farmers did not invent vulnerability. They inherited it. They found it waiting for them. And then they transformed it into profit. This distinction matters because it reveals a larger truth about the case. The murders were not isolated from society. They emerged from society. They grew within gaps created by prejudice, neglect, and indifference. Understanding that context does not reduce the responsibility of those who committed the crimes. Rather, it explains how such crimes became possible in the first place. By the early 1890s, however, subtle shifts were beginning to occur. Public awareness regarding infant welfare slowly increased. Journalists examined troubling reports. Reformers gathered evidence. Medical professionals voiced concerns. Questions that once remained confined to private conversations began reaching broader audiences. The old assumptions no longer seemed sufficient. Too many inconsistencies existed. Too many unexplained disappearances lingered. Too many stories refused to disappear entirely. The walls protecting the baby farming industry were beginning to weaken. Yet even then, few imagined the scale of what remained hidden. Few imagined how many children might have been affected. Few imagined that one woman would become forever associated with one of the darkest chapters in British criminal history. Somewhere in Essex, another mother still read advertisements searching for hope. Somewhere another infant still entered a stranger's care. Somewhere another promise was being made. The machinery continued operating. Quietly. Efficiently. Almost invisibly. But pressure was building. Every secret accumulates weight. Every deception leaves traces. Every lie requires maintenance. And eventually the burden becomes impossible to carry. The world of baby farming had survived for years because nobody possessed enough pieces of the puzzle. One person knew part of the story. Another knew a different part. The complete picture remained hidden. Soon that would change. A discovery was approaching. A discovery that would transform rumors into evidence. A discovery that would force investigators to look beneath appearances. A discovery that would begin unraveling years of deception. For now, however, Victorian Essex remained unaware of the storm gathering beyond the horizon. Families slept peacefully. Churches prepared for Sunday services. Markets prepared for another day of business. Life moved forward exactly as it had before. Yet somewhere behind closed doors, decisions were being made that would eventually shock an entire nation. And somewhere among those decisions lay the first steps toward exposing a nightmare that had been hiding in plain sight all along. The stage was now fully set. The world had been established. The social forces had been revealed. The hidden machinery of exploitation was already in motion. All that remained was the moment when the darkness would finally collide with the light. And when that moment arrived, nothing would ever look ordinary again. Most true crime stories begin with a single victim. A name. A face. A life interrupted by violence. The Chelmsford baby murders are different. The deeper one looks into this case, the more difficult it becomes to identify a single victim whose story can represent them all. There was no one child whose photograph appeared in every newspaper. No single family that carried the entire weight of the tragedy. Instead, there were dozens. Perhaps hundreds. Tiny lives scattered across years of deception. Infants whose names were never recorded properly. Children whose graves were never marked. Babies who vanished before they were old enough to form memories. This absence of identity creates one of the most haunting aspects of the case. History remembers the killer. History remembers the investigation. History remembers the scandal. Yet many of the victims remain unknown. Their stories survive only in fragments. A birth certificate. A letter. A newspaper advertisement. A payment receipt. A witness statement written years later. Tiny pieces of evidence left behind by lives that barely had the chance to begin. And perhaps that is where the story of the victims must begin. Not with one child, but with all of them. Imagine Victorian England through the eyes of a newborn infant. There is no understanding of wealth or poverty. No awareness of social stigma. No comprehension of shame or respectability. The world consists entirely of sensations. Warmth. Cold. Light. Darkness. The familiar sound of a mother's voice. The comfort of being held. The instinctive search for safety. Every infant enters the world trusting completely. Trusting without choice. Trusting without hesitation. Trusting the adults around them to provide everything necessary for survival. The children at the center of this story entered the world with that same trust. Many were born in small rented rooms. Some arrived in overcrowded boarding houses. Others entered the world in charitable institutions or modest cottages scattered throughout southern England. Their beginnings varied. Their fate often did not. One young woman gave birth during a rainy autumn evening in London. The labor lasted through the night. A midwife moved quietly around the room while candlelight flickered against stained walls. Outside, carriage wheels rattled over wet cobblestones. Inside, pain and exhaustion filled the hours. When the child finally arrived, the room fell silent for a brief moment. Then came the cry. The unmistakable cry of new life. A sound capable of transforming fear into hope. The mother wept. Not because she did not love her child, but because she loved the child deeply and had no idea how she would keep it alive. For weeks she struggled. Money disappeared quickly. Employment opportunities vanished. Every day seemed more uncertain than the last. Eventually she found an advertisement. A respectable woman seeking infants. A permanent home offered. Excellent references available. The wording sounded compassionate. The promise sounded sincere. The mother responded. Days later she placed her baby into another woman's arms. She kissed the child's forehead. Whispered a final goodbye. And walked away believing she had secured a better future. She never saw the child again. Elsewhere, another infant entered the world under similar circumstances. This baby was a boy. His mother worked as a domestic servant. She had hidden her pregnancy for as long as possible. Loose clothing concealed her condition. Excuses explained her growing absence from social activities. Eventually the truth became impossible to hide. Employment ended shortly afterward. The loss of income created immediate crisis. Food became scarce. Rent became difficult. Hope began to disappear. Then came another advertisement. Another promise. Another caretaker willing to help. The arrangement followed the familiar pattern. Money exchanged hands. Assurances were given. A future was discussed. The mother cried throughout the journey home. Not because she doubted her decision. Because she missed her child before she had even reached the end of the street. Months later she wrote a letter requesting news. A reply arrived. The child was healthy. The child was thriving. The child was happy. The words provided comfort. The words were almost certainly lies. Then there was a girl born in a small Essex village. Her mother was barely out of adolescence. Family support had evaporated after the pregnancy became known. The village itself felt smaller with every passing day. Every glance seemed judgmental. Every conversation seemed loaded with meaning. Isolation became unbearable. When she learned of a woman willing to adopt infants, the offer felt like salvation. She traveled by train carrying everything she owned in a worn bag. Inside the bag rested a tiny knitted blanket. A gift made during pregnancy. A gift intended to accompany the child into a better life. When the moment of farewell arrived, she left the blanket behind. Years later she would still remember that blanket. The color. The texture. The careful stitching. It remained one of the last tangible connections to the daughter she never saw again. These stories repeated endlessly. Different names. Different locations. Different circumstances. Yet the same heartbreaking pattern. A mother trapped by circumstances. A child entrusted to a stranger. A promise of safety. A disappearance. The tragedy becomes almost overwhelming when viewed collectively. Because every victim carried not only a life but also a future. Each infant represented countless possibilities. One might have become a teacher. Another a doctor. Another a farmer. Another a parent. Another an artist. Another a friend whose kindness changed someone's life decades later. Every child contained infinite potential. Potential that vanished before it could unfold. Historians attempting to reconstruct these cases face enormous challenges. Many records were lost. Others never existed. Victorian bureaucracy often failed society's most vulnerable members. Poor families generated fewer documents. Unmarried mothers avoided attention whenever possible. Children who disappeared into baby farming networks frequently vanished from official records as well. As a result, modern researchers encounter silence where answers should be. Entire lives reduced to incomplete paperwork. A birth registered. Then nothing. A payment recorded. Then nothing. A letter written. Then silence. The gaps themselves become evidence. Evidence of how thoroughly these children disappeared. Yet among the surviving fragments, certain themes emerge repeatedly. Many mothers genuinely loved their children. This point cannot be emphasized enough. Popular myths sometimes portray women who surrendered infants as indifferent or selfish. Historical accounts reveal something very different. Desperation. Fear. Grief. Sacrifice. These emotions appear again and again. Some mothers spent weeks agonizing over their decisions. Others delayed farewells until circumstances forced immediate action. Many carried guilt for years afterward. Not because they abandoned their children. Because they believed they had failed them. That guilt would later become even more devastating when the truth emerged. Imagine discovering that the decision you made to protect your child may have delivered that child into danger. Imagine learning that the person you trusted had built a business around deception. Imagine realizing that every reassuring letter might have been written after your baby was already dead. Such realizations haunted survivors long after the investigation began. For many mothers, uncertainty became a lifelong burden. Some never learned exactly what happened. Some never recovered emotionally. Some spent decades wondering whether their children had suffered. The victims therefore extended beyond the infants themselves. The crimes created circles of pain expanding outward through families and communities. Grandparents lost grandchildren. Siblings lost brothers and sisters they never knew. Mothers lost pieces of themselves. The emotional damage stretched across generations. Meanwhile, the infants remained voiceless. They could not tell their stories. They could not describe their final days. They could not explain what happened behind closed doors. Their silence became permanent. And because they could not speak, others must speak for them. That responsibility falls upon history. It falls upon investigators. It falls upon anyone attempting to understand this case. The victims deserve more than statistics. They deserve recognition as human beings. Tiny human beings. Vulnerable human beings. Loved human beings. Children who entered the world expecting care and protection. Children whose trust was betrayed. Children whose futures were stolen before they truly began. In many ways, this chapter of the story is the most heartbreaking. Not because of violence. Not because of criminality. But because of innocence. Absolute innocence. There is no ambiguity surrounding the victims. No controversy. No moral complexity. These were babies. Defenseless. Dependent. Entirely reliant upon the adults around them. And yet the very adults entrusted with their welfare often became the source of their greatest danger. Somewhere in the historical record lies the name of a baby born on a cold winter morning. Somewhere else rests the name of a girl whose mother sang lullabies during sleepless nights. Somewhere there is evidence of another infant wrapped lovingly in blankets before beginning a journey toward an uncertain future. Each child mattered. Each child was real. Each child deserves remembrance. Because before this story becomes one of investigations and arrests, before newspapers expose scandals and courts deliver justice, it is first and foremost a story about children. Children who never had the opportunity to tell their own stories. Children whose brief lives unfolded in the shadows of a society that failed to protect them. Children whose memory would eventually become the driving force behind one of the most disturbing criminal investigations in Victorian history. And among those countless forgotten names, one particular victim would soon emerge from the darkness, carried unexpectedly back into the world by the waters of a river that had hidden secrets for far too long. Among all the victims connected to the Chelmsford baby murders, there is a cruel reality that separates this case from many other famous crimes in history. Most murder victims leave behind stories. They leave photographs, letters, memories shared by family members, descriptions recorded by friends and neighbors. Their personalities survive long after their deaths. The infants caught in the baby farming system rarely had that opportunity. Many existed in the historical record for only a few weeks. Some for only a few days. Their entire lives occupied less space on paper than a train ticket or a receipt. And yet, despite the scarcity of details, traces of their existence remain. Enough to remind us that they were not statistics. They were children. One of the most haunting aspects of the case is imagining the final moments of hope experienced by the mothers who entrusted their babies to people like Amelia Dyer. Hope has a remarkable ability to survive even in terrible circumstances. A young woman might spend months terrified about the future, yet still believe her child could escape the hardships surrounding them. That belief often became the emotional foundation upon which every decision rested. Without hope, surrendering a child would have been impossible. With hope, it became bearable. Many mothers carefully prepared their babies before the handover. Tiny clothes were washed and folded. Blankets were repaired. Hair was brushed. Some children arrived carrying small possessions intended to accompany them throughout life. A ribbon tied around a blanket. A stitched handkerchief. A keepsake tucked discreetly among clothing. Simple objects. Yet objects loaded with meaning. A mother might spend an entire evening sewing initials into fabric. Not because the child needed it immediately. Because she imagined a future. She imagined birthdays. School days. Adulthood. Perhaps one day the child would look at those initials and wonder about the woman who stitched them there. That future never arrived. In many surviving accounts from Victorian baby farming investigations, investigators discovered personal items preserved among evidence. Tiny garments. Baby shoes. Pieces of cloth. Objects that once belonged to children whose names had largely vanished from public memory. Each item carried a silent story. Someone had purchased that garment. Someone had wrapped a child in that blanket. Someone had believed the child would need it in the years ahead. The emotional distance between that hope and the eventual reality is almost impossible to comprehend. One mother reportedly wrote several letters requesting updates about her infant. At first, responses arrived regularly. The child was doing well. The child was gaining weight. The child seemed happy. The letters contained exactly the information a worried parent wanted to hear. Reading them likely brought relief. Perhaps she reread them before bed. Perhaps she showed them to a trusted friend. Perhaps she carried them folded inside a pocket. What she could not know was that the child described in those letters may no longer have been alive. The possibility transforms ordinary correspondence into something deeply tragic. Words intended to comfort instead become instruments of deception. Every sentence extends the illusion. Every reassurance delays the truth. Every letter deepens the betrayal. The victims themselves remained unaware of the world into which they had been born. They did not understand social stigma. They did not know poverty. They did not know the circumstances that had led their mothers to make impossible choices. They simply existed. Breathing. Sleeping. Crying. Growing. Trusting. There is something profoundly heartbreaking about that innocence. Adults often navigate life with caution because experience teaches suspicion. Children possess no such defenses. Infants possess none at all. Their survival depends entirely upon the compassion of others. That dependence transforms acts of cruelty against them into something uniquely disturbing. The children connected to this case never had opportunities to defend themselves. They never had opportunities to escape. Their lives rested completely in adult hands. The wrong hands. As historians and investigators later examined surviving records, certain patterns emerged regarding the mothers. Many came from working-class backgrounds. Many lacked family support. Many feared public humiliation more than poverty itself. Victorian society could be extraordinarily unforgiving. A respectable woman who became pregnant outside marriage often found herself pushed toward isolation. Neighbors judged. Employers dismissed. Relatives distanced themselves. The social punishment extended far beyond the pregnancy itself. It threatened futures, careers, marriages, entire lives. This pressure created enormous emotional vulnerability. And vulnerability attracts predators. Amelia Dyer understood this dynamic instinctively. She knew her clients rarely arrived from positions of strength. They arrived exhausted, afraid, desperate for solutions. She did not need to force trust. Circumstances did much of the work for her. A frightened person naturally gravitates toward reassurance. A desperate person naturally gravitates toward hope. The baby farming industry sold both. For a price. One can imagine countless scenes unfolding across England during those years. A railway platform crowded with travelers. A young mother holding a sleeping infant. She studies a piece of paper containing an address. Her hands shake slightly. She wonders if she is doing the right thing. The train arrives. Steam fills the air. Passengers board. The journey begins. Hours later she reaches an unfamiliar neighborhood. She knocks on a stranger's door. A woman welcomes her inside. Tea is served. Polite conversation follows. Everything appears normal. Everything appears safe. By sunset the child belongs to someone else. At least legally. Emotionally, the separation remains impossible. The mother carries that absence forever. Many women spent years imagining the lives their children might be living. Some pictured happy homes. Others imagined future reunions. A few even planned to reconnect once their own circumstances improved. Those dreams became another category of victim. Invisible victims. Futures that existed only in imagination. Futures destroyed alongside the children themselves. As more evidence eventually emerged, investigators discovered that the scope of suffering extended far beyond individual deaths. Entire networks of deception had evolved around the baby farming trade. False names. Frequent relocations. Invented explanations. Misleading correspondence. The machinery required constant maintenance. Yet at its center remained the same vulnerable victims. Children. Always children. The historical record preserves heartbreaking glimpses of this reality. A baby's age noted beside a payment. An address linked to a missing infant. A mother's inquiry regarding correspondence that never arrived. Tiny administrative details. Yet behind every detail existed a human story. A story interrupted. A story unfinished. One of the cruelest aspects of the case involves the passage of time. Many murders generate immediate grief followed by investigation. Here, uncertainty often lasted years. Some mothers never received confirmation regarding what happened. Some died without answers. Some carried questions into old age. The absence of certainty became its own form of suffering. Without a body, hope survives. Without proof, doubt remains. Without answers, grief cannot fully settle. This emotional limbo trapped countless families. Even after suspicions emerged, many struggled to accept the possibility that their children had become victims. The truth felt too monstrous. Too cruel. Too difficult to process. Yet reality cared little about emotional readiness. Reality waited patiently beneath the surface. And sooner or later, reality would emerge. The victims themselves, however, remained frozen in time. They never grew older. Never celebrated birthdays. Never learned to speak. Never formed memories. Their stories ended almost before they began. That is what makes this chapter of the case particularly devastating. The children never had opportunities to become individuals in the way society normally recognizes. They left no achievements. No careers. No families of their own. Only absence. A vast collection of absences stretching across years. An empty chair at a table that never existed. A voice never heard. A future never lived. Yet those absences matter. Perhaps they matter precisely because they force us to imagine what was lost. Every unidentified infant represented possibilities beyond calculation. The value of a life cannot be measured by its length. A child who lives for 6 weeks possesses the same intrinsic worth as a person who lives for 90 years. The tragedy lies not in what the victims accomplished. The tragedy lies in what they were denied the chance to accomplish. That distinction transforms statistics into human beings. And it reminds us why the story deserves to be told. Not because of fascination with the killer. Not because of historical curiosity. But because the victims deserve remembrance. The children of the Chelmsford baby murders occupied society's most vulnerable position. They possessed no power. No influence. No voice. Yet more than a century later, their story still echoes. It echoes through surviving documents, through investigative records, through historical research, through every attempt to understand how such crimes became possible. And as investigators would soon discover, one particular victim, an infant whose body would eventually be recovered from the water, was about to accomplish in death what so many victims had been unable to accomplish in life. That child would force people to pay attention. Would force authorities to ask questions. Would force hidden crimes into public view. The baby could not speak. But the discovery of that tiny body would speak loudly enough to begin unraveling an entire world of deception. And once that process began, the forgotten victims would finally start emerging from the shadows where they had been hidden for far too long. There is a moment in every tragedy when statistics cease to be numbers and become human beings. For the Chelmsford baby murders, that moment exists in the countless fragments left behind by mothers who never stopped remembering. Long after names faded from official records. Long after addresses changed. Long after newspapers moved on to other stories. The memories remained. A baby's smile. The weight of a sleeping child resting against a shoulder. The sound of tiny breaths in the darkness. The feeling of small fingers wrapping around a mother's hand. These details rarely appear in police reports. They rarely survive in court transcripts. Yet they represent the most important part of the victims' stories. Because before they became evidence, they were loved. That love is what separates these children from the anonymity that history often imposes upon them. A child may live only a few weeks and still transform the lives of everyone around them. A newborn may never speak a word and still be deeply known. A baby may leave behind no memories of their own and yet remain unforgettable to those who held them. The victims connected to the baby farming system entered the world surrounded by hopes that were often far larger than the circumstances into which they were born. Some mothers imagined their children growing up in comfortable homes. Others dreamed of futures they themselves had never been allowed to pursue. Education. Security. Opportunity. Respectability. The very things Victorian society denied so many vulnerable women. In surrendering their infants, many believed they were opening doors rather than closing them. That belief would later become one of the cruelest aspects of the entire case. Because hope had been weaponized against them. The trust that should have protected their children instead exposed them to danger. And nowhere is that tragedy more visible than in the stories investigators would later reconstruct from surviving correspondence. One letter described a mother asking whether her baby had begun teething. Another requested a recent photograph. Another simply asked whether the child was happy. Such questions seem ordinary. But they reveal something profound. The mothers had not forgotten. Despite distance. Despite shame. Despite social pressure. Despite the passage of time. They continued thinking about their children. They continued imagining lives unfolding elsewhere. Many likely created entire futures in their minds. A daughter learning to read. A son running through fields. A child celebrating birthdays surrounded by loving caretakers. Imagined futures became emotional lifelines. Without them, the pain of separation might have been unbearable. The tragedy, of course, is that some of those futures existed nowhere except in imagination. Reality had taken a different path, one hidden behind respectable doors and concealed by carefully maintained lies. Yet even as those lies accumulated, the emotional bonds between mothers and children endured. History often focuses on physical crimes, the murders, the evidence, the investigations, the arrests. But cases like this reveal another category of harm: the theft of possibility, the destruction of relationships, the erasure of futures. Every victim represented more than a life lost. Each represented years that would never be lived, moments that would never occur, connections that would never form. The ripple effects extended outward indefinitely. Consider a child who might have lived. That child could have become a parent, a grandparent, a friend, a teacher, a spouse. Entire generations can emerge from a single life. When that life ends prematurely, countless possibilities vanish alongside it. The scale of loss becomes impossible to calculate. This reality makes the Chelmsford baby murders uniquely haunting. The victims were denied not only their futures but their identities. Many never lived long enough to establish them. Some existed primarily as names written on scraps of paper. Others survive only through indirect references in letters and records. A few disappeared so completely that historians can only estimate their existence. Imagine how vulnerable a person must be to vanish almost entirely from history. That vulnerability defined the children at the center of this story. They arrived in a world that measured human worth through rigid social standards. They were born into circumstances beyond their control. They depended entirely upon adults for survival. And they entered a system that often valued convenience above protection. No child chooses any of these things. Yet they shaped every aspect of the victims' lives. Or, more accurately, every aspect of their brief lives. As investigators later attempted to reconstruct events, they encountered an unsettling pattern. Again and again, they found traces of affection left behind by mothers. Small clues. Small acts. Small expressions of love. A carefully packed bundle of clothing. A note attached to a blanket. A request for updates. A question about health. A concern about comfort. These details matter because they challenge a misconception that occasionally surrounds historical cases involving surrendered children. The misconception suggests indifference. The evidence suggests something very different. Pain. Concern. Sacrifice. Heartbreak. Many women believed they were making the least harmful choice available. The fact that those choices led to tragedy does not erase the love that motivated them. In many ways, the mothers became secondary victims of the same system. A system that offered judgment instead of support. Condemnation instead of assistance. Isolation instead of compassion. The baby farming industry thrived because desperation created demand. Without that desperation, many victims would never have entered its reach. This context becomes increasingly important as the story moves toward the crimes themselves. Because the victims were not selected randomly. Their vulnerability formed part of the mechanism. They belonged to a population society often ignored. A population unlikely to receive immediate attention when something went wrong. Predators understand such dynamics instinctively. They seek opportunities where accountability is weakest. And in Victorian England, few groups possessed less protection than illegitimate infants. The children could not speak. The mothers feared speaking. The authorities often lacked information. The perfect environment for exploitation emerged. Yet history has a tendency to preserve certain truths, even when powerful forces attempt to erase them. Not every record disappeared. Not every memory faded. Not every victim remained hidden forever. Slowly, pieces survived. A registration document here. A witness statement there. A newspaper report decades later. Fragments scattered across time. Individually, these fragments seem insignificant. Together, they form a memorial. A reminder that these children existed. A reminder that they mattered. A reminder that they deserve to be remembered as more than anonymous casualties. As this chapter of the story draws toward its conclusion, one image becomes difficult to ignore. A mother standing in a doorway. An infant cradled against her chest. Fear battling hope inside her mind. A stranger waiting nearby with promises of safety. The future hanging on a single decision. That image likely repeated itself countless times throughout England. Different faces. Different towns. Different names. The same impossible choice. And every choice carried the potential for tragedy. Some children entered loving homes. Some survived. Some built lives beyond the reach of history's darkest chapters. Others did not. The victims connected to the Chelmsford baby murders belonged to that second group. They never reached childhood. Never experienced adolescence. Never discovered who they might become. Their stories ended before they truly began. Yet paradoxically, their silence would eventually become impossible to ignore. Because one victim, though unable to speak in life, would soon force an entire nation to listen. The discovery waiting ahead would transform whispers into suspicion. Suspicion into investigation. Investigation into revelation. And revelation into outrage. The river that had concealed secrets for years was preparing to surrender one of them. When that moment arrived, the victims would no longer exist only as forgotten names and unanswered questions. They would become the center of a criminal investigation that exposed the hidden machinery of baby farming to public scrutiny. For the first time, the world would begin seeing what had been happening behind closed doors. For the first time, the children would stop being invisible. And for the first time, the woman responsible would find herself moving steadily toward a reckoning she had spent years avoiding. The victims had no voice. But soon, through evidence, through discovery, and through the relentless pursuit of truth, their story would finally begin to be heard. And the darkness that had swallowed so many young lives would be forced into the light. For years, the machinery operated almost invisibly. Babies arrived. Money changed hands. Promises were made. Then the children disappeared. The pattern repeated so often that it became routine for those responsible. Routine is a dangerous thing. When people repeat the same actions long enough, caution begins to fade. Confidence replaces fear. Success breeds complacency. And eventually, even the most carefully hidden crimes begin leaving traces. The story of the Chelmsford baby murders reaches its darkest chapter not with a sudden explosion of violence, but with the quiet repetition of countless betrayals. Each betrayal began in the same way. A knock at a door. A newspaper advertisement answered. A frightened mother searching for hope. A child placed into unfamiliar arms. The tragedy unfolded one infant at a time. No dramatic chase announced the danger. No screaming headlines warned the public. Instead, death moved quietly through rented rooms and modest houses, hidden behind lace curtains and respectable appearances. To understand the horror of what happened, one must imagine the contrast between expectation and reality. A mother surrendered her child believing she was purchasing safety. She imagined clean sheets, warm meals, gentle caretakers, perhaps a small garden where the child would one day play, perhaps a family willing to provide opportunities she never could. Those images allowed her to endure the separation. Those images helped her sleep at night. Those images kept hope alive. Meanwhile, reality waited behind a different door. A reality far removed from the comforting future she imagined. Inside some baby farming houses, infants represented something entirely different. Not children. Not human beings. Not lives deserving protection. They represented expenses. Financial burdens. Obstacles standing between a caretaker and profit. Every bottle of milk reduced earnings. Every doctor's visit reduced earnings. Every additional week of survival reduced earnings. The logic was simple, cruel, and horrifyingly effective. The less money spent on a child, the greater the profit. Once greed becomes the primary motivation, compassion quickly disappears. Historians studying Victorian baby farming frequently encounter descriptions that feel almost impossible to comprehend today. Rooms crowded with infants. Poor ventilation. Unsanitary conditions. Babies left unattended for long periods. Children receiving inadequate nourishment. The environments varied, but the underlying pattern remained consistent. Neglect became a business model. For some victims, death arrived slowly. For others, it arrived with terrifying speed. One of the most infamous tools associated with criminal baby farmers was the widespread use of sedatives. Victorian society possessed access to substances that modern medicine recognizes as extremely dangerous when administered improperly to infants. Preparations containing opiates could be purchased relatively easily. Marketed as remedies for restless children, they promised exhausted caregivers a solution to crying and sleeplessness. To legitimate parents,